All right, Tanner Wilson.
Hey, buddy.
Dude, thanks for coming on. You know, I want to apologize to you actually, and you don't even probably know that this happened, but we met through work, and, you know, we were being shown around different areas, and you were so excited to meet me because I was part of a program that works with people with, like, lived experience that helps youth. You were, like, wanting to talk to me, and that night, I was actually up all night with, like, a toothache, and I didn't even want to go, but I was like, I got to go. And I just was like very short with you, I felt. I felt like I was rude. And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, he probably thinks I'm like a dickhead or something because like you were like, oh, dude, like, yeah, you're part of this program. It's awesome. Like, I have a cool story. And that's actually like why you're on today is because I've heard bits and pieces, but I never heard the full story.
Yeah.
And then I was just kind of like, yeah, like, I just wanted to go home, essentially. So I don't know if you felt that or not, but I want to apologize.
No, I didn't, but it says a lot about you and how similar we are that you thought about that all that time.
Yeah, dude, the whole time
that's
I'm
exactly
like,
what
oh, man, I feel so bad. He probably thinks I'm a dick because
No.
I was just, like, so silent the whole
No,
day.
not at all. You work enough in this industry and you start to understand people have on and off days.
100%.
Especially something like that with toothache, man. That's tough. Rattles
Dude,
the
I was
brain.
up all night. I'm still dealing with tooth stuff. But, yeah, so we met through work, and we both worked with high-risk youth. And, you know, in different roles, but in, you know, similar, in the same community, right? And we'd cross paths every now and then, and we'd chop it up. And, you know, you've told me little bits about, like, being in the military. Were you incarcerated at one point, too?
Yeah, as a youth,
As a
on and
youth.
off, briefly. But, like, on and off, and also a little bit as an adult.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what I thought. So, like, I knew there's a story there, but we've never actually had an opportunity, man. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on. And I want to, like, first start off with learning about the environment and where you grew up, right?
Sure.
Because I feel like the way you were nurtured says a lot about the direction in life that you take and some of the behaviors that you adopt. So did you grow up in Edmonton?
No, so I grew up I was born in Brantford, Ontario.
Okay.
1986, so I'm turning 40 this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's
It's
that feel?
year. You know what? Actually, I'd be lying if I said it bothered me.
Yeah.
I want to pretend it bothers me because that's what the
Right.
world says. Oh, you're turning 40.
Yeah.
No, I don't care. I've actually, like, after all my experiences, I'm kind of happy and proud to have made it to 40. So
It's a new chapter too, right?
yeah, it is. And I think being, you know, guys who have been through stuff, I've waited to get to this phase where I'm mature, intentional, direct. I'm put together emotionally. So it's nice to turn 40. And actually, like, there was a time in my life where I didn't think I'd make it this long. So it's a milestone. My family thinks that's kind of sick, but it's a milestone for me to make it to 40. Yeah. But no, I was actually born in Brantford, Ontario.
Okay. I don't know much about Brantford.
No, it's like an hour outside of Toronto, in between, I'd say in between London and Hamilton.
Okay.
So kind of in southwestern Ontario. Now it's kind of all conjoined as one, but it used to be Toronto, Burlington, Hamilton, Brantford. Now it's all people live in Brantford, work in Toronto. So it's gotten pretty crazy there.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so my parents actually were teenage parents. They were both 18 years old.
18.
They met in high school. My mom came from an immigrant Italian family. She's a first generation Canadian. Her parents and her sister were born in Italy. And then my dad, even more interesting story, half black, half white, comes from a family of 8 or 9 kids, 3 different marriages.
Oh, wow.
So needless to say, when they had a kid as a teenager, it was like something that back then in the 80s, black man, Italian woman, non-English speaking Italian parents. So it was a rocky start right from the get-go. Yeah.
Dude, I don't know how people do it. Like I have a coworker who had to meet with the parents of a youth that he was going to mentor. They didn't speak any English at all. They had a translator there. And I said this before, but like when I moved from Newfoundland to Halifax even, which is a ferry ride, dude. That was hard for me, a white guy who speaks English pretty well.
Yeah.
I can't imagine coming from another country and not speaking a lick of English.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I don't know how you navigate that. That must be such like a, I don't even know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's how it's always been, you know.
Okay.
I think even today, immigrant families come with absolutely nothing. It's just
Dude.
the idea of nothing is a little bit different. Where before you could survive with 2 cents in your pocket as long as you had strong work ethic, right? But yeah, it's always been like one of the most important parts of my heritage has been my grandparents making that decision. Because I think when they came over, they were only 21 and 20. They had 1 daughter at the time. and my grandfather hopped on the boat with his woodworking skills and came over to Canada.
Why did he come here? Do you know? Because like people want to go to Italy.
Yeah,
I
no,
want to
I
go
know.
to Italy. You know what I mean? Like coming to Edmonton, Alberta, like one of the coldest places
Yeah.
in Canada. Like, is that where he came?
No, so he came to Ontario.
Sorry,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think part of it was it was late 60s in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Mussolini and Italy were part of World War II, and they were on that Nazi side. Like Hitler and the Italian leader were both dictators. So Italy was in a weird place post World War II in the 40s and 50s. And I think wanting something more was starting to become a thing, like wanting, like people were coming from France and all over. And I think another part of it was my grandmother, my nonna in Italian, her family came. And so my grandfather kind of jumped on board because all her siblings and stuff are here. They all settled in Ontario as well. And then my grandfather's family all stayed back in Italy. So that's kind of how they came over. But I guess back then it was a little easier to just pick up and go because work was a little easier to find. And if you had a skill, right? So,
no, that's true.
Yeah.
So, your grandparents came over to Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
They had your mother.
Yeah.
And then your mother and your father both met in high school.
Yeah, separate high schools.
Yeah,
my dad was going to North Park Collegiate, which was a high school football quarterback, athlete,
stud.
track athlete. They met at a party, started kind of an on-again, off-again relationship.
As you do in high school?
Yeah, and then as a grown man, I've learned that the origin story was actually at a ski resort in Quebec on a grade 12 trip is when it all kind of went down.
Wow, very very aristocratic.
The stuff you learn when you get older. And then, they... my mom found out she was pregnant at the end of grade 11, start of grade 12.
Dude, I can't imagine. Like, I think back to when I was in high school, man. I was a child.
For sure.
You know, you think that you got it all figured out.
Yeah.
But you're an absolute child, man.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine getting that news. And, like, so she just, I guess, obviously she's pro-life.
For sure. Yeah, and I think at that point she just had to be, right?
Well, she probably, I mean, I don't know, like Italian. When I think of Italian, I think of like really big on family, like family ties, family connection. Like when I think of Italy, that's what I think of, right? So I'm assuming some of those values, did she have some of those values?
100%. I think that's one of the questions I asked as a young man was like, how did the family take it? You know, because it's Roman Catholic. So not only did they have a kid out of wedlock, my dad wasn't a Catholic. They were teenagers. So there was lots of things that were up with it. But then the story that I've heard is that as soon as I came into the world, my grandparents gave up all that old school thinking. And my mom says once my grandparents put their hands on me, I was the first grandson. Even though my mom was a teenager, they loved on me and continued to love on me until the day they died. So it's interesting, right? Because it's like one thing until when you hear, oh my God, my teenage daughter's pregnant with a black man.
Right.
And then now the baby's here. That hate really goes away. If you've ever held a baby, you know what I mean? Like, how can you have hate in your heart?
Yeah, it's like that, the image of the dad's like, we're not getting a puppy. And then they gets the puppy and he's like, I love this
And then
dog.
he's cuddling the puppy on the couch
every day. Yeah, no, 100%.
That's what I imagine that's what my grandfather was like.
Guaranteed, man. Because how could you, man? I mean, at the end of the day, you meet that baby and it's like, what are all these things I'm holding on to?
Yeah.
This is a life and it's family now, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
What kind of person am I going to be to turn my back on this child over some, whatever rules, tradition or whatever like that?
Right. I think it's the universal thing that makes everybody kind of weak in the knees is a brand new life, right? It's a chance to rewrite what you've done wrong or right, so I think everybody gets excited about it.
So they had you. You were the first. You have siblings?
Yeah, I have one sister.
You have one sister. Same mom and dad?
Same mom and dad. She's more of the mistake because she came 18 months later when they were still pretty young. So
so they stayed together. They were like, we're going to try to make it work. Were they kind of like...
My mom went 6 months without telling her parents. So my dad's side, a little more open. There's, like I said, there's 8 or 9 siblings. My grandfather has 3 different wives. So they were a little more open. So my mom really relied on that side. She went, I think, 6 months because she was small. They couldn't tell until she told... her parents, and my grandfather looked at my dad in his Italian voice and said, "So Paul, what are you gonna do?" And my mom and him both tell the same story. He looked at him, his voice shaky, looked at both my grandparents and said, I'm gonna marry her. And my mom's like, "What?"
Whoa.
And then so that was when they were pregnant, and then they got married in August of 1986, and I was born in September 1986. So they got married in a Protestant church because what my dad would do. They not a Catholic church, Anglican, sorry. And then, my mom got in. She was in her wedding gown with a big old 8-month pregnant belly, and they looked like kids. And my dad's got this cheesy mustache, and and then I was brought into the world. And then they wanted to have kids close in age, so my sister kind of happened. She'll say like she's more of the mistake, because what kind of teenager tries to have 2 kids back to back? But
well, have you ever watched 16 and Pregnant? There's some people out there doing some wild shit.
For sure. Yeah, there is.
So what were they a big part of your life growing up? Like, what was your childhood like?
Yeah,
so you had teenage parents.
Exactly.
Man,
so. At the time, my dad was headed off to play college football.
Okay.
He had scholarship offers at like as far as University of Hawaii.
Oh wow.
Was going to run track. He was playing junior football in Hamilton. So he was more living like he was on his way to leave the area. My mom was actually always planning to kind of be a nurse. Did well in school. She went on she's I think finished grade 12 after I was born, and then started nursing school right away.
Dude.
Had 3 or 4 jobs right away. My dad gave up his sports dreams, went to work at this place called Corning, which is like a factory. Actually, they're the ones that make like all the tubing on toilets, the ceramic tubing.
Okay.
So he got a job at a factory, and then I was about 4 years old, and my mom and dad moved us down to North Carolina. So my mom graduated her nursing school. Back then it was a 2-year program.
Dude, shout out for her.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Hell yeah, man.
2 kids and being like, I'm still going to get after it.
It's kind of been the driving force for I think me and my sister now, is like, how hard can it really be, right? Yeah.
I want to back up a little bit though. Did your dad, I don't want to say give up, but did he like cease his sports dreams because of your mother's academic goals, having kids, and like, was it more like out of necessity? Was he like, okay, I got to get a job to help provide?
I think, but at the time he was a teenager, a young black man, like a visible minority in a almost all white town. So he did it. He did what he needed to do at the time, but I don't think it ever clicked for him. I think my mom was that driving force, where for him, he really had to reverse course in his life, right? He kind of had some freedom to do whatever he wanted, and then all of a sudden it was me, and I was there, and my mom coming from the family that she did, where kids first, and you kind of drop everything and take care of the kids. And then coming from his side of the family, kind of coming from 3 different broken homes. He actually was raised by his stepmother and his dad, and then there's a whole bunch of generational trauma on his side. So he definitely had to, like, it was more difficult for him to reverse course. And my 100%. Mom tells the story like more natural, right? So more like he kept being a teenager, and my mom kind of started to be the adult. And then I think that was right away when it started to, they started to have some friction, right? My dad's partying with his buddies, my mom's nursing babies at home, that age-old teenager story, right?
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay, so flash forward a little bit, like, you're a little bit older, you go to South Carolina.
North Carolina.
And why you went there? Because of a job offer your parents had or something?
Back in the 80s in Ontario, the NDP were in power, and they cut a bunch of healthcare jobs. And through that, the American healthcare system is half private, half public, however it works. I'm not a big economics guy, but so my mom got recruited. They were recruiting young Canadian nurses that couldn't find jobs in Ontario.
Okay.
So we got recruited to like a number of places. We almost went to as far south as Brownsville, Texas, which is right on the border of Mexico and Texas. Like, you can see Mexico from there.
Interesting. You'd fit in there, I feel like.
I would.
You kind of look like your name could be Diego or something, man, 100%.
I could pull out the chain and look even more
exactly.
But so she took a job in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it was at Bowman Gray Hospital, so a private hospital on the University of Wake Forest campus. Wake Forest is a pretty big basketball school. Like, Tim Duncan went there, NBA player. So they moved down. I was 4, my sister was 2, and the only big issue was my mom was going to go down and have a job right away. My dad, though, unskilled, just kind of that athlete type guy, my mom was able to work a deal where they would go down and they would pay for my dad to go to Bowman Gray Medical School, which is right there, and he would learn to be a respiratory therapist. So we went down, and for the first 2 years, my mom worked, and my earliest childhood memories were like my dad headed off to school with his books and stuff, and my mom going to work, and then them coming home. But it was like they both worked, and we lived in this little apartment building.
What was childcare like?
So
Because you were young, so you
Yes,
weren't.
I think-
school age of what, 4 or 5.
honestly, back then, not even like it was, I'm talking like it was 60 years ago, but really it was what, 35 years ago. The big apartment complex, like there were enough neighbors and friends around.
So
like
you had community, like
yeah,
looking out.
and I think everybody kind of worked at the hospital, right? They were all nurses coming from all
I
over,
see. Yeah,
so
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
kind of looked after each other. And I do remember, like for the first year or so, either my mom's parents were there or my dad's parents were there to kind of help
so
out.
you had family there for support. See, that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize too, man. Like, it's tough to do much else with your life if you don't have like someone to lean on for support when you have children, man. Like, I don't know how some people do it, dude. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's that's one thing I definitely remember, like having teenage parents. I remember grandparents and aunts and uncles being around a lot. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we ended up in North Carolina. Yeah.
So how long were you there for? Like, were you there for a long time?
So my sister and I were there till I think I was turning 13. She was 12.
So you were there a long time.
Yeah, my parents only stayed together.
Almost.
They built a house right away. In like this nice quiet cul-de-sac. There was a bunch of other Canadian families that lived around us as well. They separated after about 2 years. Like it just didn't last. They were still in their early 20s. I remember like the little stuff, like my dad being next door partying with the neighbors and my mom putting us to bed, and just that frustration building.
Yeah.
And then my dad moved out in North Carolina and quit his job in respiratory therapy. And then that's kind of when my childhood went from like, I wouldn't say like the nurturing stopped, but it went from like absolutely no real traumas or seeing anything and not having it too difficult to then my dad moving out. And then it was like that back and forth is when the family unit kind of really fell apart. Because then my dad was a 24-year-old guy who lost his 19 to 23. And then he was out on his own as a single dad, week on, week off. It started as, and then it went to weekends. And yeah, we stayed down there until my grandmother died in 1998. So we were down there from 90 to 98 or so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, when you're young, you change so much year to year. Like from when they met when they were 18 till their earlier 20s, they're completely different people. Yeah. So you're like growing together, but like you said, there's all this resentment because there's this like uneven workload or commitment, and then there's probably resentment from like, I don't even know, like maybe your dad, what was he like towards you guys? Did he take any of that out on you, or was he always grateful? Like, because I know some parents, man, I work with a lot of youth who are like, their parents don't want anything to do with them, man.
Yeah.
Like they didn't want the pregnancy. It's in their life, you know, out of sight, out of mind sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Or they're in their life, but they're kind of like, fuck's sakes, like I gotta go, you know, do so when I'd rather be out with my buddies, out chasing my dreams, whatever.
For sure.
Did you feel anything like that, or was everything?
You know what? I think it's stuff I didn't realize till later, for sure. But at the time, like my dad we were a Canadian family, so we wanted to find hockey. So my dad started a hockey program down in Winston-Salem. And even though my parents were separated and my dad was doing whatever he was doing, he was still always at hockey. Same with baseball. What I never realized was that it was like my mom always getting us there. But I remember my dad being at everything, but I don't remember getting like that childhood experience from him. I got it definitely from my mom.
Yeah.
But there was, I think, maybe some resentment on his part, because I like to think like when it comes to parenting, and I'm a parent now, you're either built for it or you're not. But just because you're not built for it doesn't mean you can't find the skills to be good at it or be built for it. Or it's like your body, right? Like there's guys that have
crazy genetics.
They just start well, but then there's other guys that were nothing, and because they chose to say, okay, well, I'm not built with it, I got to put in the work. And I think that was the difference between my mom and my dad. Neither of them really knew how to do it, but my mom was more built to get better, where my dad was like, oh, getting better is hard, getting better is scary, so I'm going to keep being me, right? The kids love me anyways, but then that creates issues, right? Because as an adult, you start to realize, wow, one parent really changed when they were a parent. The other one just kind of got to still be them.
Yeah.
And then you become a parent, and you're like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's tough too, because, you know, I came to terms with this later in life as well. I think when you grow up, there is like some sort of reckoning, right? Where you take assessment of who you are, who your parents are, because you have more context to your life. You have more experience and richness.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times people like to put their parents into a box of mother and father. And there's like these archetypes that we create from our interactions with them, but from our interactions with other people's parents, media, you know, what we read. And then we build an idea of what a mother and father should be.
Yeah.
But then when you come a father or a mother, or you work with youth or whatever it is, you have that experience, you realize that you feel unprepared, and it's actually challenging, and it's tough, and it's scary. And like you said, some people, are more nurturing by nature, but some people like have to develop these things. And unfortunately, when they have children, they're developing it as they go, which means a lot of mistakes and learning. Yeah. And I think that some people are able to recognize that and forgive and be compassionate, be like, oh man, they were figuring it out. They weren't perfect. They're human. But other people hold on to a lot of resentment, and then they put a lot of blame onto their parents because they slipped up and didn't make perfect choices. Yeah. And I think for me, like, my parents were not really in my life, like really at all growing up. But I've come to learn since that I'm like, you know, I forgive them for that. You know, I still think you should have a responsibility when you have a child 100%. To be part of your child's life. But at the end of the day, like, they are a person with their own problems, their own worldview, their own parents. Like, it goes back generations. For sure. And there's no value to me to point fingers and be like, it's all your fault that I'm the way I am. It's like, well, I could do that, or I could, like, you know, claim some responsibility of my own life and start moving forward as well. Yeah. So I could totally see. I like that what you said though. That, like, some people are. I
think where you go wrong too is like where people go wrong is, like you said, they have this idea of how it should be. Like from the time I was like 8 or 9 till now, like I haven't had that everyday dad. So my idea of it, and the way even my mom, she's got her own stuff, right? Like she suffered from ADD her whole life. Didn't get diagnosed till she was an adult.
Makes sense.
But you create this image. Like for me, it was always like I looked at what her parents were, and I'm like, okay, well, I should have like my grandparents. To me, were awesome because they were always there. They put their heads down. They worked. Everything was regimented and structured. But then as you get older, you realize like what they had as parents, right? And like I've even learned about like my grandfather, my nonno, who's my hero, my idol. He beat the crap out of his kids when they were younger, right? And that was a really hard thing for me to accept. Different times, right? But you just learn about, you know, why if he did that and he was such a nurturing, loving man, what did he get when he was a kid?
This is it.
And as I've gotten older, I think that's what I've realized about both my mom and my dad. Is that I'm the way I am at 40 because of my childhood and my teenage years, and so are they. And they had a kid during that phase, right? So, it's been it's easier now being an older guy. And once I had kids, I really started to get it. But I think as much resentment as you can have as a kid, sometimes the parent also can have some resentment for doing things the wrong way and then not being able to easily have things that you want. Like it's 100%. Tough to get a relationship with a kid back after you haven't had one for a while, right?
Yeah, and you know what, man? Like, my father is still, my mother passed away, but my father's still alive. But, you know, I choose not to speak to him because I think for the longest time, I had a conversation with my therapist, and I was like, you know, I'm moving to Alberta, and, you know, maybe I should tell my dad, right? Maybe I should see him before I go. I'm not really sure, but I don't really talk to him right now. And she's like, well, what are you expecting? Are you expecting him to be like, congratulations, Brandon? You know, I'm so happy for you. What are you doing up there, man? Please stay in contact. If you're expecting that and you tell him and you don't get that, how are you going to feel? And knowing that, do you still want to do it? And he's not the type of guy to do that, man. You know, he'd probably, I don't even know what he'd say. He'd probably just bring the conversation back to him and, you know, start telling me about the awful day he had and his problems and, you know, ask me for $20, like literally. So I'm like, you're right. Like, am I expecting a relationship there that doesn't really exist? Like, he was never really around. So I just chose to step away from that. You know what I mean? And, you know, I've come to terms with it, but yeah, it still bugs you, right?
For sure.
You know, you don't have your dad to call up and ask for advice, or not in the way that you see other people show up. And I think that in having that experience, at least I can speak for myself, when I see other people treat their parents poorly, when, like, in my head, their parents are fabulous in a lot of ways. Like, it really bugs me, but then I have to, like, remind myself, like, their relationship is in perspective to their entire life, not this little window that I'm seeing, right? Like, their interaction isn't isolated. It's accumulation of like all these other interactions coming together in this moment that I'm witnessing. So I can't judge this based on what I'm seeing without seeing everything else, right?
For sure.
Yeah,
Perspective's a funny thing when you get older, and you like there's been a lot of talk lately the last couple of years, like on social media and things, about like childhood trauma, and you'll realize who your parents are when you realize the trauma they went through, and like that's whether they're whether your parents living on the streets and like shooting up meth or doing whatever, or they make their mistakes early in life and turn their life around. Like at the end of the day, you can't change it. It's your makeup, it's your DNA, and I think what you said is perfect. That expectations. That's how I was for many years with my dad. I should be able to set the bar up here, but with him, that's not possible. So for me, it was like, what am I expecting? I'm expecting stuff that he's never been able to do, the skills he doesn't have, but he does offer all these other things. And over the years, you learn to really get that from your family, even your friends, right? You learn,
100%.
like there's certain buddies I have that, man, I'm not talking about my relationship problems with you because you give BS advice, 100%. But then he gives really good advice about fitness and health. And so it's just picking and choosing where you get that advice from. And parents are no different, especially as a grown man. You don't need it. Like you're not relying on that one source of advice anymore. So now we're just like everybody else. Right now we got all these voices, not just dad's voice. And getting over that kind of upsetness about not having that. I still complain about it, man. I'm like, I say, I wish I knew how to change a tire or do the oil. Like it's embarrassing having to ask my buddies, and they learn from their dad, but there's also other stuff they didn't get.
Oh, exactly.
Right. So you learn what all that is, right? Like I got a lot of skills from my old man. I didn't get, maybe that holistic stuff that most people get, but I got a lot of skills from him, right? I didn't realize that till I was a grown man.
And you won't, right? No. I heard a good analogy that I think about all the time, and in relation to this, so like, a child, when they swing, they believe that the harder the kick, the higher they go. We as adults know, though, that they can only go so high, right? They have limitations. And people are like that. They can only go so high. But some people do not recognize that limitation, and they put in more effort and more effort and more effort, expecting something that doesn't exist. And I think once you realize that, this person has a limitation to whatever it is, and, I'm no different. I have limitations, and so do you. You're able to, kind of relieve yourself of any sort of like anger, frustration, guilt when you recognize like, I don't need them, or they're not capable of giving me X, Y, Z, whatever, right? I'm going to have to turn to this, or turn inward, turn to a book, whatever it is, community, faith, whatever you want to. I think about that all the time, because even in relationships, man, like, you put in all this effort expecting something to change, but you're like, I think this person is just limited to like this.
That's it. It's
right
capacity, right? We all have different capacity. And I think the capacity like stretches a little bit, but you're born with a certain amount of capacity for certain things. It's like, it's like once you've experienced trauma, like your capacity for trauma goes way down, I think. Or for some people in the opposite, all of a sudden they can deal with a ton of trauma, right? But capacity is it's like, how much can you take, and the other one is the big one is like the bar, the standards,
100%.
Especially when it comes to parenting. Cause then I hold my own standards. Like I hold these invisible standards as a dad. It's like, what? Like what I want I don't expect that of my mom and dad. So why am I thinking that my kids expect that of me?
Well, you just want to do better, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good quality to have, because a lot of people, they either repeat cycles or they change them completely. Like my little brother, he has a daughter now. And we have different dads, but his dad has his own problems, just like my father. And we have the same mom who struggled with drug addiction, who ended up it ended up taking her life. So we have similar, trauma, history, childhood. But now he's like the best father of the year, dude. He's there, present every day. He's like killing it, man. And my uncle's big on education and employment and this and that. So every time he talks to my little brother, he's like, oh, what's going on in these realms? And it kind of like rubs him the wrong way, because he's not excelling in these realms, but he's excelling as a father. And I said to my uncle, I'm like, if at the end of the day, all he is a great father, is good enough, man. And my uncle's like, damn, you're so right. And to see him like break those cycles and stuff is beautiful, man, because how many people, I have a sister who has a kid who she's succumbed to addiction, and she's not around for that, man. And it's like, it's tough. You can go one way or the other. So it's,
Yeah, it's a tough, parenting is, I knew parenting's a big role, and like how much you affect someone, whether you're present, not present, however you are, you're going to affect somebody. I didn't really realize how difficult it was to repair a parental relationship until working with adults. And like when I first came downtown, I was working with adults, and like I watched these men and women really struggle through their addiction, find themselves in recovery. And then there was this whole new battle to rebuild their life as a parent. And it was always trying to be the parent that they should have been, but that's impossible, right? Like you can't, if you were a drug addict for the first 10 years of your kid's life, that's not going anywhere, right? It's just got to become part of the story and part of like deep understanding. Like understanding is a big place you get as a child of someone. You come to a place of understanding where it's like, okay, I get it now. But when you're the one on the outside trying to get back in and redress all that, that's what I noticed was like people really struggled because they wanted to be who they should have been, not who they are now and what they have to offer. And 100%. I think that's really it's tough to turn around those situations.
That shame and that guilt just 100%. Weighs on you. Like, again, my mother, for instance, you know, she would get drunk sometimes. She'd be like, Brand, I'm so sorry you were in foster care. And I'd be like, I don't want to talk about that right now. You know what I mean? The brief moments that, you know, I was like around her, and you could tell that her drug addiction was a lot of coping because she had 3 kids, man, and she's made a lot of mistakes. And a lot of that addiction was just escapism from feeling that shame and that guilt. And she went through abuse in her childhood. And, you know, that's partly why I forgive a lot of what happened, because I'm like, I can't imagine being you know, until you're in that person's shoes, you can't know what you would do, right? I am no better than anybody else in saying that I'm immune to whatever afflictions that you have, because I'd be stronger morally. 100%. And it's like, dude, you have no idea, man. It's easy to sit on your castle and look down at people when you're not down in the trenches with them, right?
Yeah, it's parental pride. And as a parent, it gets even worse because I find myself like, I feel like I'm so dedicated and so addicted to my kids that when other people aren't, and when I see like even my closest friends, when I see them choose something over their kids, it upsets me. But really that's a me problem, because like that's my childhood going back and saying, no, like you parents should always choose their kids. But like really that's a buddy choosing himself for a little bit, and where I'm trying to like compensate by being with my kids absolutely all the time, giving them absolutely every lesson. But what's the better realm, right? Because I only know the one side. So it's like I sometimes find myself literally being the exact opposite. And then I think, if I had a parent that was in my face all the time, telling me how to save money, coaching all my teams, would I have loved that? No, because I'm not that type of guy. And if my kids are like me, they're independent. So they need that guidance, but they don't necessarily need to be told what to do. So I find myself battling that, trying to overcompensate, I guess, for the mistakes of my dad.
100%.
You know, like I've tried to teach my kids, hey, this is how you hammer stuff. My son's like, Dad, I learned that in junior high construction class. Like, I don't need you to tell me that. Yeah, go.
Right? Well, yeah, I got TikTok to watch. No, I think that, you know, you heard the term helicopter parents, where like, you know, I've heard like lighthouse parents where, you know, you're this beacon, I guess, where you provide direction and you're a strong foundation where your kids can return to, but they're free to navigate on their own, but they know they can come back and you can kind of illuminate the way. And I'm like, that's how I want to be. You know what I mean? But it's tough because you want them to avoid all the hardships that you had, and you're like, oh, you just knew this, if you knew that. But then again, I look back, I'm like, dude, I've had opportunities where people have been trying to show me stuff. I'm like, get out of my face, guy. Like, I'll figure this out on my own. Sometimes you need to like burn your hand on the stove to really get some of those lessons like deep in you.
We see it a lot in our work with youth. Sometimes like there are a few select kids that you say something to and they take it at face value and they make the change. But then there's other kids that hear it. They hear your voice.
That's right.
They can't put it into action, but then they do when, you know, they're in handcuffs or whatever they are, or they're getting beat up by a friend, and they hear you in their head saying, like I remember that a lot, right? Like 100%. Never acting on those little things. But that beacon is true because it's so easy. Even as a parent, the easiest thing I can do is do something for my kid. And a lot of times I do because it gets annoying, right? They're crying about a video game not working, or they can't pass a level, and I hop in. But we know that like in casework, you can't drag somebody along with you. You can't do it for them. And you get into doing that as a parent. And I think it works in like 2 ways, where there's a lot of adults that struggle because they've always had mom and dad
100%.
Do it, right? All those kids that I idolized, they actually don't have many soft skills. to deal with things because mom and dad were always there. So it's weird when you don't have that growing up, which I can't say I didn't because I had my mom.
That's right.
But I tend to be a helicopter parent, especially when it comes to injuries and things like that. I'm really worried. Like I'm the guy that, like, even now at my oldest is 14, I want him to put his helmet on to go down tobogganing because like I can't live with the fact if something were to happen, right? But that's helicopter parenting, man.
No, well, yeah.
It's safe, but you could easily sell that as like, oh, I'm being safe. It's like, no, I'm looking out for myself.
That's
right. I'm not. I rode lots without a helmet.
True.
I got to let him experience what he wants to experience, and that's been the most difficult part for me. Has been like letting go, right?
Yeah. Well, they say that like children learn best when they do like borderline dangerous things under the supervision of you have to let them like hold the scissors, climb the tree, do these sort of things to know where the boundary is.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're sitting idly by and you're picturing the 1,000 ways to die, you're just like, Jesus, I don't know how I can live if anything did happen.
Yeah, my teenagers started to go out now, man, and like I play it cool, but I'm on my couch late at night. It's the only time I play video games now. Is I'm like I mask it as, oh, I'm just up late playing video games. Like no, because I'm waiting for my teenager to say he's going to bed at his buddies. You know,
that's a cool like life thing to go through.
It
though,
is.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's a trip.
Yeah, you're gonna look back on that with fond memories. I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
I want to get back to you though, man. Yep. Okay, so you said that as a youth you got into some trouble, I guess. Like flash forward there, like where are we to now? Because your dad and your mom split up. She moved to Ontario then? Or back to Ontario?
They split up. We lived separate. Like they lived separate for 4 or 5 years down there because we had such a good childhood routine. We were playing all the sports, basketball, football. We stayed in that kind of area. We started living with my mom more and more. My dad went through his whole phase with addiction and quitting his job and women and things like that. So a chaotic time that I didn't realize until after. But when I was about 12, so 1998, my grandmother died of breast cancer. Okay. And my mom moved us back. She was having such a hard time being far away. She's the nurse of the family. My mom went back for 2 or 3 months and we lived with my dad for those 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And then I remember things being so crazy at my dad's that it was like she was going to move us back to Canada and come and get us. And that was kind of like the start of us not seeing our dad much anymore because then he stayed in North Carolina. We went to Ontario. So then I was like this Americanized 12, 13-year-old that I went to a elementary school with 100 kids in Brantford, Ontario, and a new neighborhood with like kids that had known each other. And so life really kind of started.
Man. Yeah. As a kid, that's tough. Kids are fucking mean.
Yeah.
Too,
living with our grandpa, like, because he was an old Italian man. He couldn't really take care of himself. And that's what they do in those families. So we were living at our grandpa's, which was even already like a thing kids would talk about, right? Oh, they live at their grandpa's. They'd have funny accents. But I kicked all their ass at sports. Honestly, like I came up and owned at sports because growing up in the States.
That's huge.
So that kept me, but it was also like within 2 days of moving back, I was in fights. I was just telling my teenager the other day about my first fight was this kid, Kyle Walsh, that he's like a grown man friend now.
Oh yeah.
But we lived across the street from each other and I was the new kid and I was a bit bigger than everybody else and he wanted to fight me. So I met him in the park because we used to walk home through this park after school. And I felt like for the first time I was kind of being challenged because in my old school, North Carolina, I knew everybody. In this one here, I knew nobody, and everybody here was white. Down in North Carolina, there were a lot more black kids, a lot more Mexican kids. So I was like the brown kid up here. So I felt challenged right away. He wanted to fight me, kicked the crap out of him. Somewhere in there, he ran off, and by the next day at school, he had told everybody I was gay because I slapped his butt during a fight. And you remember when like you're a teenager and like it's like for me it was like now it's so open and I love that. But like when I was young, it was like a real thing if somebody said you were gay. And it's to me it never bothered me. It only ever bothered me that like what other people thought. And back then it was like you were weak, right? That's what he was saying. Like, oh, he touched my butt. So that's what everybody talked about. And for like the first 2 or 3 months, I fought kids. And I was bullied, but I was like getting along. The girls liked me, the guys liked me, but there was always 1 or 2 of them that just couldn't. I had a lot of like, I had a chip on my shoulder being a kid coming from the States, good athlete. And I felt like that was like the first and only time I was ever at like the bottom of the group. It was always like, for the rest of my life, it was always like people were trying to kind of take me off my pedestal.
on you,
At least that's what the narrative I built. And it actually was a defining moment in my life, like coming back and going to school with kids that had gone to school together for 7 or 8 years, trying to fit into that mold was actually more traumatic than I could have ever imagined in my life.
100%.
So it was like,
target
yeah, so we ended up back up here, and it was like, then it was just this fight to fit in. And then we finally got to go off to high school, and then it was like the gates opened up, because then you meet kids with like all sorts of backgrounds, right?
And then you're starting like kind of fresh with a lot of people, because then a lot of schools come together.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of new,
Yeah.
a lot of novelty.
Yeah.
I feel I share that with you because, again, when you grow up in foster care and you move from home to home, each home you move to, you're introduced to a new school system.
Yeah.
So I was the new kid and the foster kid in a lot of situations. And just like you, man, like I remember my buddy, I still talk to him this day, TJ. We, the first day, this is my 4th foster home. So I'm like 8 or 9 years old. And this is grade 5. And I'm coming in at like 3/4 of the way through, man. And I've been taken out of school for a long time, so I don't know shit. We're doing long division or whatever it is, and I'm like, oh, I don't know shit. And TJ wasn't there that day, and they're like, oh, you could sit in his desk. And I was like, oh, you're sitting in TJ's desk? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
And then, you know, he comes back the next day, but like, you know how kids are, man. They're just like a little mean. I remember like just fighting for, you know, someone looked at you wrong. You know what I mean? But we ended up becoming friends later in junior high for I'm thinking grade 5 and grade 6. We were like always just like catty towards each other. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, but yeah, like I know how hard it is to go through these transitions and then feel like you have to prove yourself. And then, yeah, you have this chip on your shoulder. And yeah, I felt that for a long time, man.
Yeah. And it was always odd for me, because I really always liked being at their houses. More because, you know, mom, dad, they had all the video games, they had all that. But it builds you up in a different way. Not having what you think you need at home and always looking for it outside. So I always was fighting to like be a part of the group. And that either being because I was a Canadian kid living in North Carolina, or I was that kid that came in a really awkward phase of life for teenagers.
That
like
is
my
an
kids are in
awkward
that
phase,
phase now. They're going to have the same friends they have now for quite some time. And I was coming in and like trying to be a new kid, and thank God I had a set of social skills, or I don't think I would have fit in. But yeah, that's when like I remember kind of being a tough guy all of a sudden. I went from like being this little athlete kid that just played sports, video games, to then it was like, you know, you start feeling like your survival instincts kick in, which is odd because, yeah, I just always felt like I stood out to the other kids.
Well, you definitely did, man. Like you said, like you had immigrant parents and, you know, you had a little shade to you, and and then you were the new kid, right? You're from the States.
Yeah.
So like you had every kid's like, all right, this is an easy target for me,
For
man.
sure.
You had no like friends growing up. So it was like, yeah, we're just going to pick on this guy. But fortunately, like you said, you had some social skills, and you were physically, like, you know, dominating people. So, like, you can't take that away from someone, right?
No.
You're going to climb some ladder with that alone,
100%.
right?
It's a hard thing as a person to know that you can solve problems with your fists. Even to this day, I struggle with it. You know, like there's times where it's like I'm in a grocery store with somebody and like I feel somebody being a jerk to the cashier, and then they're getting tough guy, and it's like I'm thinking in the back of my head like, buddy, I would knock you out, right? And
I
like
know, man.
I tell my therapist all the time, like I know I can't be thinking like that, but that's
right.
human nature, right? Like
100%.
like I know back in the day they used to solve problems with their fist, right? But you can't do that anymore. So it's like over the years I've had to evolve.
It sucks because there is something to it, man. Like, if you're this guy running around talking shit and you get smacked in the face and you get put in your place, you start to think differently about running your mouth again, man.
Yeah.
Like, you do.
Yeah.
That's just it. Not to say I endorse people going around smacking the shit out of people, but there's something to it.
Yeah. Would you
know?
say that working with higher risk youth, the ability that of like you're not afraid of like a little altercation makes you a better
100%.
high-risk youth worker because you know they know they're not going to mess around.
Well, this is it, and they can sense that too, man. Like, how often do this field of social services is dominated by females, right? You're actually seeing a lot more males now, which is good, and a lot more males like you and I who have a little bit of a colorful past, right?
Yeah.
And how many times have I been, interacting with a youth who have been mean to like a female. I'm talking about like young males specifically, mean to like these young female women. And then I come in and the tone like just changes. I think that's like, my buddy Jordan actually talks about it too, how like his son will mouth off to his mom, but he'll come home and be like, dude, do this. His son's like, all right. Yeah. I think there's something to it. Like, this guy could probably kick my ass. So I can't be tough with him because like, he's just seeing through all that bullshit, right? Like there is something to that, right? For sure. Like if you feel like you could dominate somebody physically, you're going to probably be a little more aggressive till you meet someone who you're like, at the end of the day, you could probably kick my ass.
Well, I think that's when it comes down to like law and justice. At the end of the day, that's why it's necessary. I've always been like an arguer that, why do certain police officers need guns and stuff and the uniform? It's like, well, because the uniform and the guns speak for the seriousness of what's going on.
100%.
And sometimes somebody needs that, like that cue, right? People need those cues that they can see, not just the verbal cues. Some people pick up on the seriousness of the situation because of the uniform. And like even in youth jail, I always wondered, like, why can't those guys be in their civilian clothes? And it's like, because at the end of the day, the kids need to know that they're in a bad spot.
Some authority in their
bad
spot,
and the person in uniform is going to be tough on them. But yeah, it's like you do need that.
You need that 100%, man. Yeah. And yeah, there are some youth who, part of me is like, if they had their ass kicked maybe once, they would stop fucking around like they are now. And then there's part of me too is like, well, I don't want them to endure like physical pain, but like just a little smack here and there, nothing crazy where they're sent to the hospital, something to like wake them up, keep them alert.
Well, life changes when you realize that people out there are tough and people out there are not going to back down. Like I tell the kids that are committing these crimes, like, I was working with a youth and he likes to stab and he likes to rob people with the knife. Never done anything with it. But I told him one day you're going to meet a guy who's doesn't have a passion for violence, but who ain't going to back away from it.
That's right.
Right. There's lots of people out there that have had experiences. There's lots of people out there that haven't dealt with their trauma in like those physical ways.
Absolutely.
That it is absolutely going to come out if somebody gets in their bubble and gets in their circle. And that was like what I'm always trying to teach these kids, man. You're going after these grown men. Like
100%.
There's a lot of monsters out there. There's a lot of people with hidden feelings and emotions. There's a lot of guys like me who haven't been in a fight in 20 years, but absolutely would love to get my hands dirty still. You know what I mean? So I think it's weird because if you look back at like the Wild Wild West and stuff, there was something for all that physicality. But there's not anymore, but there can be. Like we know in our work that looking the part is the part sometimes. Like looking professional or looking responsible means something. And I think like people would always say like, oh, how come you're never afraid of like being with the high risk youth? I also sometimes forget that I'm 6'1", dark skinned, you know what I mean? A deeper voice. But that is a real struggle working with the youth, is that how it looks physically, right? I've met some really good female caseworkers that are like a 6'2" youth that's just used to fighting everybody and getting his way and physically dominating. Where's going to be the shift in that? But then you take someone like you or I who isn't looking for a fight, but we're certainly not going to, we can maybe have the confidence to say something back in those situations, or that male pride to say something back. And sometimes that's what those kids need. Some of the kids that I've had the best turnaround with are kids that we've almost had a fight. Like there was a kid that almost fought me in West End Mall. One of the weirdest experiences of my life, but I stood my ground. It wasn't
what
like,
happened?
So you know that when you ever taken a kid shopping?
Oh yeah.
And they have these freaking huge ideas of what they should be wearing.
Oh, 100%.
Like,
they need Nike Tech. I'm like, bro, you live in a group home.
Yeah. So I was working with, doing CSD work. So like with CS, so you work on their budget, a kid from a group home. And we got in an argument in the middle of West End Mall because he was not only like, you know, when you tell a kid no, and even my own kids, you tell them no, they always want to ask again.
Sure.
But the real lesson is like, no, it's a no. And whether you like it or not, you need to learn to respect that no. And it always turns into going with these kids shopping is, yeah, I can buy you this $100 shirt, but you don't live the life or have the work ethic or didn't earn it to really, everybody's just going to know that somebody bought you this shirt. Right. Sure. And that's what I'm trying to teach when I'm going. It's like, I can get you it, but it's fake. Right. You didn't earn this $100 shirt. So you get in these arguments with kids about what they can afford, what they can't afford, how to maximize their budget. And this kid just wasn't having it. We'd go to Winners. He'd be like, no, I don't want it. I'm like, why, man? It's a polo shirt. No, don't want it. And I'm big on, you know, if somebody's with you and taking the time, and especially when it comes to money and spending the money, there's a certain level of like respect that you pay back and forth. And I know like that's the number one thing we work with these kids. They didn't have those skills growing up. So when I see it, I'm patient. But if it's a youth that I've worked with for a long time, it's like, man, come on. Like, you know me, I've been authentic with you. I've been personal with you. And he started to walk more and more ahead of me. Almost like I was like his servant. And he would go into stores and then quickly go around and come out. And then I waited for him and he walked past me and I said, I'm not doing this. We're going home. And he walked right up to my face and he's like, you're going to buy me these shoes. And I said, I'm absolutely not going to buy you these shoes. What kind of person would I be if I just rolled over and let you buy these shoes and buy you these shoes? So what lesson's that going to teach you? And he walked away from me, walked out. I followed him out to the front door, out by like the food court. Get outside, he turns around, he starts screaming. He comes walking up to me again. I know the kid long enough, he's not going to do anything. But what it really was like being told no. And I realized that even these kids have nothing, but they've also never been told really no. Especially kids that grow up in the system, right?
100%.
Especially some of these kids in the group home, like the staff are put in a position where just to get them to regulate and settle, you gotta say yes. But what it does is it kills them, their future of thinking things just come, right? Like these kids that are living on the streets, but they have $200 shirts because that's what their caseworker bought them for, you know, like.
Or the no is never really a no because, yeah, they might say no, but then if I kick up enough stink, they're going to probably say yes because they don't want to deal with the escalation, right? Because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these people who work in group homes, they're like young child and youth care, you know, they're 20 years old. They want to save the world. They're working in this group home, but they're working with some youth. Some of these group homes got like 6 youth, all from complex different things. And you got to, you got to deal with a freak out, and then you got to restrain the youth sometimes. I had to restrain a youth once for 2 hours, man, who was trying to bash their head through the window and like fight people. And I'm like, dude, it would have been easier to say like, okay, just go ahead and do whatever you want.
100%.
Because I didn't want to deal with that.
100%.
But then you have some staff who are like, dude, I had my own shit going on. I'm coming into this, and then they want to use the TV when, you know, they only have an hour tech time, and go ahead, man. You watch all your stuff. It's easier. So then when they do encounter somebody who is trying to teach these essential life skills about budgeting and boundaries and things like that, like, who are you to tell me what I can and can't have when, you know, child and youth care worker X over here lets me do whatever I want? And good for you for staying firm, man, because I think that, at the end of the day, that's what you should do. Deal with the friction, have those hard conversations. At the end of the day, you're also not their friend.
No.
You know what I mean? If they walk away a better person because of these interactions, but they hate you, great. That's what should happen. I think a lot of people want to be their best friend and their buddy, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't, it would be great if they listened to you and took your advice and you guys had this great working relationship and you also like really care for them in like a buddy kind of way. That doesn't always happen, and that's not really what you're there for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always tried to explain it, like when the kids would get mad, you know, you're working with these 13, 14-year-old kids, they get pretty close with you, and then you got to be firm. But I always like say to them, and it's easy for me to relate because I have kids of my own, and I would say to some of these kids, like, if you think my 13, 14-year-old kid likes me, they don't. Like, they shouldn't. You shouldn't like somebody that's helping you grow. It's like working out in the gym. You shouldn't really like your muscle feeling like that, but it's necessary to grow. I think like no is the number one thing that a lot of these kids need is like, and I needed it and it wasn't necessarily someone to tell me no. It was somebody strong enough to hold that no. So many people over my life told me no. But I can get by in any room. I can say what anybody wants to hear. I needed those people that really were like, no, and I don't care what happens after that.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
and I remember all those times in my life, it was like, oh shit. Okay. Well, I'm not going to do anything. So,
yeah,
and that's a lot of times that happens in youth work, man. It's like I would say to these kids, well, if you don't give me, then what? Right. Like, because that's a challenge that they've never gotten.
Absolutely.
It's a challenge that a parent, because parents have confidence, would give, but they don't have that. And it's impossible even in the best of group homes for 3 staff to give that to 5 or 6 kids. You know what I mean?
100%. And going back,
they're going to miss that.
Exactly. And going back to what we were talking about when we were talking about like being that male presence that isn't afraid of conflict, and that I've seen and been through a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not intimidated by a 12-year-old boy telling me like, you're gonna see, and like banging his wall. Go ahead, beat your room up, dude. I don't care. I don't pay for any of that. And you could have your blow up. I've been like that, and I've been able to navigate a lot of those situations, but it's still challenging, right? It's still like not what I love to do.
No.
And that's actually, I didn't really enjoy working in group homes just because oftentimes your team is not all on the same page.
Well, I'd love to work in a group home, but the only way I do it is as a manager, as a leader.
Yeah,
in
you
a
have
group home
to
so that you can have the social atmosphere the way that you want it, right? Because it's hard in those settings to bring the game that you're bringing when the rest of the staff, and it's not that they aren't doing it right. Mm-hmm. It's just if you're going by like the ethos that you and I have, it's tough to find that in general. Mm-hmm. And then it's even tougher to provide that consistently for a kid.
Yeah.
Because as you know, like there's so many people involved in that social circle for the kid that I almost find that I have to tone it down a little bit because I know they're not getting that sort of like go-getter attitude or that I don't want to I shy away from saying like that male side of it, the masculine side, which I feel like I bring. I got to remember that in a lot of circles they don't get that.
100%.
And so I have to tone it down, right, to learn, because it was easier for me to get by with that kind of mentality as a teenager than it is. The tough kid has a hard time now, man. The fighter kid, like I was, has a really hard time. You don't fight anymore. You're like a violent individual if you fight. You're crazy, right? So if you have a penchant to like stick up for yourself, if you're a prideful person, it's a really hard time in the world to have pride.
No,
because people eat you alive, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's cell phones and stuff everywhere, and everything is being monitored.
I always tell my kids if cell phones were around, my life would be.
Dude, I'm canceled immediately.
It'd be so much different. Like I already can't be a politician because some of the stuff I said as a teenager.
Some of my Facebook updates, it's like 13 years ago you said this. I'm like, Jesus Christ, did I really? Like 13 years? That wasn't that long ago.
Or you look at like the status updates on Facebook, and it's like Tanner Wilson is, and it's all the stuff. Like it was like, partying with so and so.
Yeah, I'm writing on my friends' walls just like the most racist, craziest shit ever.
I tell the kids too, is like it used to, like I know I sound old saying it, but social media used to be really innocent and simple, and now it's like as a youth worker too, it's like changed the game for me. It's crazy. You have to be savvy on social media, and kids live their life on there now, right? Like,
oh my God,
Saturday morning at your buddies is now on Instagram.
They live for it. Like certain moments, that's how they gain clout, social status. They're part of like, they do things just for the gram. That's like a saying.
Seriously.
It's like,
my son could tell you exactly how many reposts my daughter has on TikTok. Like it's just a repost, so she's like resharing, but they're that tapped into each other's social media. And then the other thing is like the snap and the snap streak and all that. It's wild. I mean,
it is wild.
I got by just fine as a teenager, but I think it would have been too much for me and my brain.
Yeah, I think I didn't want to be involved in Facebook. I thought it was stupid. But there was a feature that Facebook had where you could like draw pictures on somebody's wall. So I used to draw like pictures of dicks on my buddy Chris's wall and be like, or like it'd be him and there would be a bunch of dicks with wings flying around. I'm like, this is you in heaven. And I would say shit like that to him. And I'm like, this is the funniest thing ever. Just like trolling my friend, drawing things on his Facebook wall. And that's how it started out. But then obviously over time, like you get connected and then like, it was kind of like, messengers. So I can use it like MSN, which is like an instant messenger.
Oh, I loved MSN.
Dude,
setting that status and walking away.
Dude, I used to spend hours on MSN chatting to freaking nobody.
Have you ever changed your childhood email? Like,
yeah.
Because I coach a lot of youth sports now, and it's amazing the younger parents that are like 26, 27, it'll still be like sexy guy 69 at Hotmail. Mine was hottie guy 99.
No, it wasn't.
Did you ever use ICQ?
No.
Like that chat that was like, every time the message would come, it was the Teletubby voice. Yeah, I used that.
I don't think I did. I only used MSN, and honestly, it was a really hard sell to my foster parents at the time because they were the old school generation that thought that anytime you download something from the internet, it has a billion viruses and it's going to steal your credit card information and you're going to go bankrupt. So like I wasn't allowed to download anything. I'm on MSN. I might as well have been talking to like ISIS terrorists because they're like, who are you chatting to? So I had to be sneaky about it. And So unfortunately, no, I wasn't. But
It's like getting those briefings at work about internet child exploitation. And I look and I'm like, I would have been that kid.
dude, I remember being in chat rooms,
Yeah.
talking to people like they'd be like, "Oh, ASL," and I'm like, "Oh." I used to
Yeah.
say I was 13 when I was like 10, thinking that like 13 was older. I'd be like,
Yeah, the
13.
Yahoo chat rooms and stuff. That
Yeah,
stuff is
and I was
crazy,
probably
man.
talking to like mad
yeah.
pedophiles. Like I
Yeah.
don't even know.
Yeah, it's
leading
wild.
them all on.
The internet's changed a lot, but it hasn't. It's odd. It's,
Yeah, it is. Damn. Okay, so yeah, you moved back because things with your dad
Yeah.
were not going well.
Yeah.
And then you're with your mom, and yeah, take me from there. You're what, like 13 at this
Yeah,
point?
so I'm 13, 13 turning 14, going into grade 9 at St. John's College, which is high school, uniformed Catholic high school.
Oh, wow.
I went there pretty normal grade 9 and grade 10. I was a high school quarterback, so grade 9 and grade 10 I played high school football, high school basketball, did a bunch of things. Pretty popular kid in school. Managed to get by. By grade 9, I'd like already was in summer school though for math.
Okay.
I just really liked this social experiment because I was a social guy, and my grade 8 year had been kind of thwarted by this whole social battlefield at my elementary school. I found myself in high school thriving because then it was like, okay, now I can have friends from all over. So like I was friends from every clique. Like I was a jock. I was in drama class. I just absolutely did it all. And then, so I made it through the first 2 years, and then summer between grade 10 and grade 11, my dad at the time was living in North Carolina, or no, Walnut Creek, California.
Okay.
So by then he had he was still living in the States, moved back up to Canada, had like this weird 2 or 3 years. So like grade 9 and 10, my dad was around, but he was like living in the same town, but he was dating a girl that was like 19 years old. He owned a pita shop. He was starting to find some success, but I was like seeing him less, and he was here. Come to learn that whole period of time he's gambling and doing drugs.
Oh, wow.
And by like grade 10, it was like, then he was not around anymore. And I started to really spin my wheels in grade 10, got kicked out. So I was like 16 at that point.
You got kicked out of your mom's house?
My mom, even just yesterday, we were talking about this because I was telling her how I was coming on this. And I said, you okay with me talking about like when I'm 16 and stuff?
Good.
And she's like, I didn't kick you out. You chose to leave because you didn't like my rules. I remember her saying, get out of my effing house.
For what? What were you doing?
I'd like to describe myself. I was never a bad kid. I've had ADHD since I was 8 years old. So I have a problem with boundaries. I wouldn't even say that like I'm bad, I'm good. I don't understand people's boundaries all the time. I do now, but when I was a kid, I didn't understand what was too much, what was too far. So I was always that kid that like would say something that got under my mom's skin. Everybody would think it was funny, but then I would continue to do it. I wasn't a rule breaker. I was a bender. I would ask questions. Like I once told my mom, I think I was like 9. I told her she's the most inconsistent parent in the world. How I even understood what that was at 9, I don't know, but that's the type of kid I was. Just push, push, push. I loved at the time. I really genuinely can say that I got something out of it to like see people get worked up and like be too much for people and push them. And that's what I would do to my mom. That coupled with I was starting to drink. I wasn't a big weed smoker yet, but I was starting to drink. I was starting to stay out late, was with girls, just wasn't following the rules.
Right.
And so at 16, she kind of gave me that choice. We'll say she gave me the choice. And I went and lived with my Aunt Janie, who's my dad's younger sister.
Okay.
And my Aunt Janie has 4 kids, 3 different husbands. The kids have been in and out of foster care. She's on welfare, off welfare. So I went to a very unstructured place from the age of 16 to 17. And that's kind of when my teenage years fell apart. My cousins were cooking coke into crack. They were prostituting teenage girls.
Oh, wow.
They were hanging around all the Jamaican guys in town. So I had this identity thing where all of a sudden I was like wanted to be a black guy now. I didn't want to be an Italian guy. All the while, my well-to-do, very structured, very organized Italian family was living up the road on the north end, and here I was getting sucked in by this Brantford life. On my Aunt Janie's side, there's 3 boys and a girl. And then my Aunt Janie was married to this guy Ray, who had 2 daughters and a son, and they all lived in this house. So there's 7 kids.
Jesus Christ.
With 4 or 5 different sets of parents. A lot, like to me, I saw it as exciting because like all of a
I was
sudden,
just about to ask, like, was this to you? Were you like, oh, this is cool?
It was amazing. Yeah. So like at that time I was like
very alluring,
because I was getting my Wilson side, my dad's side, has always been a bit appealing to me. They've always been the gamblers. I could always go have a cigarette there. I could smoke a joint as a teenager and no one would say anything. It was the first place I drank. So I went and lived there. And during that time, it was like I was a teenager out doing my thing. And my dad was throwing his life away 100 meters down the road downtown. But I was still like, I was seeing him more. I felt a break because I didn't have my old Italian uncles telling me, oh, you need to buy a home, you need to do this, you need to go to school. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I will forever be grateful for my Aunt Janie for opening her doors to me to let me explore that part of my life. But man, I started to get in a lot of freaking trouble. It was the first time I ever went to like a drug house. And I remember my cousin, I was 16, my cousin paid me $150, him and this other guy, to lick the wall in the crack den, and I didn't understand how stupid that was. I've never been more sick in my life, bro. Really? Oh, I licked, the wall was like yellow. I remember looking in the mirror, and they're all laughing, and then I just remember like everything kind of going like, I licked crack off the wall. You know, we were like, there was one of the first times I remember getting in trouble or almost getting in trouble. My cousins were always using me to carry the stuff, to carry the coke and to carry the crack. Because I was like a white boy looking. I had skater shoes, Echo jeans. You know, I didn't look like them. They were gangsters, do-rags, bandanas, half black, half white guys. So they fit the part more where I'm quarter black, quarter white, or quarter black, 3/4 white. So I look like a white guy, but I got the dark skin. So they would have me carry it. And I'll never forget, I knew I wasn't meant for the game. I had probably about an ounce of crack in my pocket. And we're walking to that same drug house. We got dropped off in a cab, and cops pulled up behind us. And my cousin's like, oh, fuzz, like the 5-0 or whatever they said. And I took the bag and I threw it into the snow, bro. And my cousins were freaking out. And I'm like, I don't want to get caught. I don't want to go to jail. And they're like, that's why we gave it to you. You don't have a record. But I panicked. I probably threw, I want to say it was probably $1,500, $2,000 worth of crack. Then we had to go to the house. And what I didn't understand until later was like my older cousin had to explain to this real scary looking dude what happened. Then we all went back out and looked for it. I had to like be on my hands and knees while they're yelling at me to look for it. And these are my cousins, right? And it was weird because that was the first experience where I was like scared. I was like, oh, I'm out of my element. But weirdly after that, for like the next year, I just went with that excitement. And man, I did everything. Like my cousin Jeff was in the Brantford jail for a little bit because he was 18. He had me ride down on my bike. It was like right downtown. I threw a tennis ball full of crack up over the wall for him. Got chased by the cops, rode off on my bike, went through all the, and this is like my hometown. So like we knew the area really well. There were like a few houses, like I still point them out when I go back to my hometown, where it was like just a normal street and they were like crack houses. So we would go in these and we're like teenage crack and coke dealers, man. I remember that phase of my life always. I wasn't as talkative as I am now. It was like I was a sponge. My cousins were so comfortable in this world. It was this, so that's when like I went from this I always had that edgy side because I got to see my dad in some pretty precarious situations as a kid. But I really was like living it now. And I'm not going to lie, it was like thrilling to be living that life and then going back to my Italian side at Easter dinner. And they're like, so what have you been up to at Aunt Janie's? Like, oh, nothing. I got money in my pocket. My sister's like looking at me like, what the hell? You know, and my mom is just shaking her head because she knows what my Aunt Janie's kids are all about. But I loved it. I ate it up, man.
That's what I think some people don't understand of why certain youth are drawn to this lifestyle, because hearing you talk about that, again, very similar to myself. When I was 16, I moved out of foster care, man. You're legally allowed to make your own decision. And I was living in a white picket fence type house, had all the opportunities. But I could live with my mom where I didn't have to go to school. I mean, I could smoke weed in my room. I could have girls over. I could do like just so much freedom to explore, like you were saying. And it's fun. It's exciting. You know, it's a rush. It's a little dangerous, but you're getting experience to this like movie level shit that you grew up watching and like now you're living it.
It was the thing that kept me in it the longest was it was all one town. And I'd gone to school. This was when I had gone to like now I was going to like 3 or 4 different high schools because then I wanted to go to a high school down there a little closer. But all my buddies that I'd grown up with since 12. We're up still in the North End. And I'll never forget, it was the coolest thing ever. My cousins had this friend, and he was the local dealer, and he had a new Mercedes-Benz SUV, white on white, like white rims, white exterior, white interior, beautiful vehicle. And none of them had a license because they're dealers, right? They spend their time in jail, and none of them had license or they had tickets. And I always got to drive. So I was always the driver. And on a New Year's, they let me take the Benz and an ounce of weed to my childhood friends' New Year's Eve party. And I'll never forget. I felt so cool. They were all buying weed off me. They're like, oh, what have you been up to? Now, looking back at it, those guys all went on and did something with their life very shortly after, and I did not.
That's right.
But at the time, man, it was like I got addicted to like meaning something to somebody. And what it was like all I really wanted was to have like a cool skill or something that I could do for somebody or show somebody. But for me, it was weed. So then 16 and 17, I become like the biggest weed dealer in town. And like, I think this, if my mom ever watches this, will be the first time she ever heard it. Me and my buddy, who was also my high school running back, were two of the biggest weed dealers in town. And we were living I was living with my cousins and still going to high school a little bit and playing football, but he was still living the life that I used to live. And we were just selling weed. And it was easy for me because no one cared at that time about it, because there was such a crack problem in Brantford that cops didn't care. And I'll never forget, my thing was I'd put it in tinfoil. I'd bring it to the schools because I was unsuspecting, right? I played football. I was in drama, but I was selling everybody weed, man.
Dude, the more you talk, the more we have in common, because it was the same for me, where in high school, I would sell weed a lot, but I was always unsuspecting. Like, I remember vividly, actually. So we all go outside and, in high school, and we get high. Then we come back in. I'm in my locker. I'm the one that got all the weed on me. And the principal comes by, and he's like, yo, I think he says to my boy Lucas or something. He's like, listen, you guys, who here just smoked weed? I could smell it off you guys here. I'm the one who got it in my pockets, right? And I think it was my boy Frankie who was like, or he was saying it to Lucas. Lucas was high, but Frankie wasn't. But I thought that he did. I thought he was out there, but he didn't take a puff at the joint or something like that. And he was like, I'm actually not. And he's like, all you guys come with me right now to the office. And I walk up, and he's like, no, Brandon, you're good. And I'm like, oh, shit. And then I just walk away. But, I'm like, bro, I'm the one that's, supplying everybody here. But I was able to, fly under the radar because, I paid attention somewhat in class, like yourself.
Probably nice to the teachers.
I was nice to the teachers. Yeah. I was also that guy, too, who would, slap high fives with the person who hold the door open for everybody or something like that. Whereas my friends were kind of like, he's a fucking loser, man. Why are you talking to him, sort of thing. I was friends with everybody. So, and then, when I moved out with my mom, she used to help me do done-ups for school. So, I'd weigh it, she'd put it in the baggies. And, I think back, and I'm like, that is insane to do that to your 16-year-old kid. When I was 16, we smoked crack together, me and my mom. And I'm like, that's insane. But she was just so addicted and so entrenched in that lifestyle. She
was unable to see
it. She was like, when we smoked crack together, and I didn't do it very often, but I wanted to experience it, and it was exciting. And I'm like, mom's allowing me to do this. She wanted to just get high. And I was there. And she was like, he's going to do it anyways, whatever. You know what I mean? And then when she was helping me for school, to her, she was selling drugs too. She was selling her medication. She was getting prescribed perks and oxys, and she was selling that to her friends and everybody else and making a lot of money. So for her, she was like, whatever. I'm just going to help him sell a little bit of weed. It's only weed. You know what I mean? But I think back, and I'm like, it's kind of crazy to let your 16-year-old smoke crack with you and then do done-ups to go to school. I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah, I think it's funny that when you look back and as a teenager and being around drug addicts, it says a lot though about, I do remember being in all these what people would say are negative or toxic places for a teenager to be. But honestly, some of the people I met in those places, there'd be these old ladies that were, they were battered by drug addiction, but they'd see us that we were teenagers. And even though we're the ones supplying them, they'd still be trying to provide that motherly love.
Oh, 100%.
And I always felt like when I was a young guy in the game, people looked out for you, but then it was you cross that stage to where you're no longer a kid and now you're a bad person, right? And I never liked that. I liked that I could always get away, because it was I always felt if I got caught, it'd be okay, well, he's just a teenager trying to find his way. And because out in the community, you really felt you even see it here, right? How these teenagers survive on the streets is because there are people who want to be motherly and fatherly out there to kids that are struggling. And I was actually caught up in
100%.
that because I'm a lover. Like I
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
love everybody I come across, right? I have to really get backhanded to not like somebody. So as a teenager, I was just a sponge. And like, I remember getting a lot of love in that game. It's a lot different now with some of the drugs and stuff that are out there and the type of drugs youth are pushing. But like positive experiences, oddly enough.
Yeah.
But it also led me to come to one day work with adults because that was like my fear of people with addictions and stuff was over in my teenage years because of all the stuff I saw.
Sure.
Right. So it had some negative things, but it really built what I didn't know at the time, but it was building up for what I would later do in life.
And that's same
Yeah.
with myself. And I think that, going back to what you said, oftentimes, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because certain individuals have experienced hardships, so they know what it's like. So even I know people that like I grew up knowing who had nothing, but if they had $20, they'd give you 10. Or if they had a meal, they'll split it with you.
Yep.
Like they had very little, but they wanted to they also knew that like, okay, you also have very little. Let me split this with you. Whereas like, some people who had a little bit more were more guarded to kind of share that, and they'd rather shut you out and like you deal with your own problems. And I think that even to this day, I'm somebody who, I lost my license when I was 17, and that's a whole story. I lost it for like 9 years, right? I had like thousands of dollars in tickets. And I used to have to get rides off people, and like I had to get the bus, I had to walk places. And in Newfoundland, when it's winter for like 8 months out of a year, it sucks, man. And anytime somebody would drive me somewhere, I'd be so appreciative, man. I'm like, dude, you just saved me like 2 hours, and like so grateful. Drive me home from work, whatever it was, right? So even to this day, if I'm around someone and they need a ride, I'm like, hell yeah, dude, I'll give you a ride. I don't want gas money, this and that, like whatever. If it's a little out of my way, that's okay, dude. I know that for you, this probably means a lot because it meant a lot to me. So I think only in having that experience am I able to like find compassion for people who are also going through something like that.
Yep.
I think that's why you see what you
For
see,
sure.
like, people who like to share and take care of other people because they know what it's like.
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. I mean, some of the most amazing conversations I've ever had are with people on the street or people in rough situations, right? I've always liked perspective. But the other thing I always liked about like being around addicts, honestly, was they're raw, man. They're
100%.
open. Like I remember, even if they weren't talking to me as a teenager, being in those situations, like I was learning. Like I mean, I was learning about things
A lot
that
of
were
life
right
experience.
and wrong with the world, and I got some bad lessons. Like there was a reason why at 18 I took a bunch of credit cards and then didn't pay them back because that's what they said to do, right? Like you go get 10 credit cards.
You find out all the little scams.
But yeah, I mean, my life as like a drug dealer per se lasted as probably like only a year. And I was always just too scared to get caught. That was always like my thing. I always said if I went away, it wasn't going to be for drugs and stuff because that was stuff it's hard to come back from, especially back then. A little easier now if you get a drug charge. But back then, you get charged as a drug dealer, like you're done. I would have never been able to go to the States. And so yeah, I got like out of that. But what I became addicted to was the money, man. The money. Hard. Like that's what I fell for. And without even realizing, I didn't realize it till I was in my 30s that what actually happened at that time of my life was I became addicted to the easy way to get money.
And it becomes easier the more people you know. I think that was the toughest thing for me growing up when I was dealing was that, I always had this perspective like, okay, this isn't going to be a forever thing for me. It's like a means to an end, right? Because I know that the end is usually jail or death or addiction. It's bad.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just going to do it until like, I'm going to do try to get a job, try to go to school, do this stuff. But on the side, I know this guy and he wants this. So let me be the middleman and make this happen. But like you said, you get addicted to the going out to eat, not having to worry about the bills, buying what clothes you want, the cars, the jewelry, like this sort of lifestyle that working full time at Tim Hortons is not giving you, man. Or, going to school, being a broke student, Rom. I remember being in college, going to conferences, buying a bunch of hoodies and this and that, and going out to eat at the restaurant. Everybody else is like, bro, I could barely afford my ticket to get here.
Yeah,
and
like,
I'm
what
like,
are you doing?
Yeah.
Where are you working on this?
Exactly. But they all knew.
Yeah.
It's the thing.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you're right. That lifestyle is very hard to walk away from,
especially as
man.
a teenager,
Well,
right?
especially as a teenager.
And even if my like mom was in a position at to provide. She wasn't that type of parent that was going to give me stuff for doing nothing.
Yeah.
So it was never like, I had all that other stuff. What I was just my ADD, my lack of like male guidance led me to just accept things the easy way. And what led me to into by the time I was 18, I was a gambling addict.
Oh, really?
Like, and was my dad's major struggle.
What kind of gambling were you doing?
Casino gambling, blackjack. And I was also the poker craze, right? That was when I was 18 was when that Chris Moneymaker guy won the World Series of Poker, and it took off. And I took off with it. And I was like, by then I was back, not at my mom's, but like, I think I was living with my mom's friend at the time because I wanted to get back to that side of the family. But then by then I was so independent that nobody really wanted me back. I'd like live with an aunt and uncle, but then I wouldn't meet my curfew. I'd take the car, I'd smoke cigarettes, all that stuff. So like, I wasn't bad. I just wasn't following any rules. And then I turned 18 and was able to gamble. And I got my first credit card at 18. And within a day of having my first credit card, I'll never forget, it was from MBNA, which was a bank back in the day. I think they're now like sponsor the Jays, but they were an easier credit card to get. It was for $500. And I bought into the Golden Nugget Casino that same day. And 24 hours later, me and my buddy had made $60,000 US.
Seriously?
60 grand.
What?
At 18. Yeah.
What?
I couldn't wait to get to that part.
G's?
Yeah. 60 grand American, bro.
What?
So
Playing blackjack?
Yeah. So the way it started was I started at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. In my living room. My mom was at work. Me and my sister were, I forget what she was doing. Maybe she was at school that day. But she had come home and I was just like playing $5 hands. And this was like a culminating life moment for me because of my whole dad's side of the family a lot of them suffer from gambling addiction. My grandfather's, been there and back again with gambling.
Yeah.
My dad, that was always his struggle. He was always signed in and out of the casinos. So naturally, that was the first thing I did when I was 18. And I started off playing $5 hands. Next thing I knew, it was like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, $50 a hand. By that night, I went over to my buddy Tim's place. We downloaded the software on his computer, kept it going. We got all the way up to 180K US. And we played all night. And I went home that morning back to my mom's with 86 grand US, told my mom, and she's like, okay, get off there. She had just worked a night shift as a nurse, went to bed. I went back on, lost 26 grand, cashed out. Didn't tell anybody, but had that fortitude to cash out because I was like, I can't let this opportunity pass me up. I'll never forget that night. I didn't have the money yet, but I took all my other buddy had a job already. So I said, hey, front me the cash. Let's take all our friends to Montana. So there was like 30 people. Went to Montana's. I wasn't able to get all the money at one time back then. They had to send it to you in increments. So they offered to pay me $4,000 a week US to my Canadian bank account. And I'm such an impatient person that I got 2 weeks worth of that, 8 grand. And as soon as I did that, I went and bought a I spent $5,000 on a Pontiac Grand Am, red. I don't know why. And that same day I got in the car, drove back to my mom's, loaded my stuff in the car and went and lived with my dad in North Carolina. Because by then my dad had moved back to North Carolina because he failed in Canada, gambled his way out, lost a business. Damn. And I never realized until now, like I was watching all that go down. I just wasn't processing it. Right. Like my dad was in the same city throwing his life away. I was kind of doing the same thing. Then I've won all this money, chance to turn my life around. But at that time I hadn't graduated high school. All my friends had. They were all going off to college. I would go and party with them for the weekend. So I was like, I got to get the hell out of here, man. That was also at a point in my life where I had a school resource officer in high school that probably arrested me and placed me in a cell 15 or 20 times to try to teach me lessons, was still up my ass, wondering like, what are you going to do with your life? By then he's like a friend. Everybody knew I was like in a place I shouldn't be. So I got out of Dodge, drove down to North Carolina that same day, started still collecting that $4,000 a week, was living with my dad and his now new fiance, who was also very much younger, Kristen, lived with them, kind of became like their friend / roommate. But I had a ton of money. I had more money than them.
Dude, $4,000 a week.
I put a $2,000 stereo system in my Grand Am. It had like the DVD player dash. The first CD I played in there was the music videos for Ludacris's, remember that Blueberry Yum song?
Of course.
I had that. So I had that CD, but it was all music videos and I would play it. I had Underglow. I had and it was a freaking red 98 Grand Am, bro. Like not a cool car.
Not at all.
So I lived down there, and that is when I started to, that was probably one of the wildest, that was 17 to 19 was probably one of the wildest experiences. I don't think I'll ever compare to like the riskiness. One of my first nights down there, I befriended this guy Murph, and he had this brand new Mustang. Like it was right when the Mustang switched from the older body style to the newer.
Okay.
And they were taking us out, and we were on some little interstate in my dad was in Asheville, which is in the mountains, the Blue Mountains, and on the like Appalachian side. So it's like Hicktown / close enough to Charlotte, North Carolina, where it's like kind of yuppie, a lot of money. But anyways, I met these other teenagers, and I was in a high-speed pursuit.
Damn.
In this Mustang with kids I didn't know. And that was like my second night in North Carolina. And for like 2 years, I did nothing but party, sell drugs, and roll around with people that I should not roll around with. I met this dude, Clint. We were like, I hadn't even really done drugs at that point. Like maybe smoked a little weed and I didn't even like it, but like we were selling Molly, ketamine, like we were, and I wasn't ever selling any. I loved being around it. I loved being around. I loved addicts. I loved drug dealers. They didn't have what my friends had, and they accepted me. Right. When I was with them, I never really took part in the crime. I just like hung out. I was scared. One of my first experiences with a gun was we were at the University of North Carolina Asheville party, and none of the guys I was with went to school there, but we were there. We ended up at this party, and they got in a fight with these frat boys, and we were on this like upper tier deck, and the 3 or 4 guys I was with got in a fight with these dudes, and I'll never remember. They were just dumping them over the side of this party, like off this deck, and then we go get in Murph's car, and he friggin' drives by, and it was the first time I ever saw an Uzi. Leaned out the window, and I'll never forget the flash. It went everywhere, and all these kids, these little white kids at a party, were jumping out of the way. We drove. It didn't hit me until the next day that like, if just being a part of that, I probably could have gone to jail.
100%.
Like I would have, it probably would have worked out. Like I had no like real record in the States yet. But it was just like I was always in these situations because of my social skills, and I didn't belong. But like socially I did, but like that scared me, man. Like I stopped hanging around those guys really after that. Cause then that Murph guy ended up taking my girlfriend. Like they were gangsters, man. They were straight gangsters. Like all of them are in jail now. Thank God at the time I was going to this church. My mom always wanted me to, she said, when you're living down with your dad, like stay involved with this church. So I went to this church called the Church of the Rock. Met this dude, Caleb, who like, we ended up living together, and he was like a Bible guy, grew up in the church, but I lived with him in this apartment I was paying for because I had all this money. We were living on the university campus. So I'm living this life like I'm working, and like I know how I should because I've been around that my life, but like I'm doing it with my gambling winnings. And all the while I'm selling drugs, spending all that money gambling, women. No, and there was like, at the time I'm 17, 18, so I'm not really being a teenager, man. I'm being an adult. That's right. My dad and his girlfriend had given me a place to live. I stole from them, stole their weed, stole their booze. My dad was supposed to get married while I was living down there, and he ended up gambling away everything they had. And took just me and him on this 7-day trip to Jamaica. And up until then, I wasn't even really a pot smoker, and that's when I really started smoking weed, was down there. I was just like a 17-year-old being able to do whatever I wanted because I had the money to do it, bro. Yeah. And one of the things that I was like doing the most was we were stealing tools from job sites.
Oh, really?
Like we'd get a job and you'd work for a day and it'd be cash, and you'd take all buddy's stuff and then you'd pawn it. And when we get to it, there's a funny story about how that came back to bite me in the ass. Once I was in the military and like tried to cross the border, I had outstanding charges from that age. But that's the type of stuff I was doing from like 17 to 19. It was just a nomad with 60 grand. Yeah.
When you got that 60 G's, like, so your mindset was, this money is an opportunity to kind of start fresh initially, but then it kind of fueled into, well, I have an opportunity to go out and hang out with these people. I'm not kind of worried about making money because I have money. 4 G's a week, like that's great, man. But like, were you also like, okay, I'm gonna try to turn more of this money into more money? Because you said you were kind of gambling during the time.
Yeah, so I actually didn't gamble for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months because I was a weird age, right? So I could only gamble online at that time. I was 18. You couldn't gamble when you're 19, or you couldn't gamble in Ontario until you're 19. So I started gambling again about 2-3 months later when I was living in this apartment with this dude. And like, there would be nights when I was trying to make more, because now it was like, oh crap, I'm starting to burn through this 4K a week. And then all of a sudden they were done. Right. So now I've got like 10 grand left, and I've built up this lifestyle where all these other guys were making good money because they were like really selling drugs and working part-time jobs. But here I was just like getting
Coasting
by.
off this
So I fit in for a
60 Gs.
while. And then all of a sudden I was like the dude that I had no money. And what made me cool, right? Like we would go to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'd take 8 guys for the whole weekend. Right. Back then, like $2,000 or $3,000 really got you somewhere. Now, like we would have spent that in one night.
That's right.
But like we'd go get hotels for the weekend. We'd party all weekend. And I loved it. It's one of the craziest phases of my life. But there's so much I could have done with that money. But where would I be if I had done it the right? There was there was no skill I had at that time. No life skill I had to make me do anything right with that money.
Dude, if you drop 60 G's on any 17, 18-year-old, what do you think with no supervision, with a parental figure in their life who is living this deviant lifestyle?
People tried, but I wasn't listening. My uncle's like a millionaire, and he's like, dude, if you put this away right now. And I tell him, we even joke about it now. I'm like, remember when I won that money? He's like, dude, you'd be a multimillionaire now with the way the stock market's gone.
Of course. But I mean, hindsight's 20/20. I mean,
I tried, bro. But really that's where I was always kind of mad at myself for that.
Yeah.
I used to tell the story like with resentment.
Yeah.
Now I tell the story with pride, because it's actually a pretty cool story. It's like
very
18,
cool story,
60
man.
grand US.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I didn't even, it's not like I put it up my nose or in my veins. I just treated everybody, man.
Yeah.
But that was my drug at the time.
Yeah, you just like really went full force on life.
Yeah, I
just
wanted to be an
enjoying
adult
life.
with money. Yeah.
And I think too, like, I don't know, if I got 60 G's like that, I think in my head, I would be like probably addicted to trying to make more, because I'd be like, I did it once.
Yeah.
And I could definitely do it again. If I could do it once, I could do it again.
Well, it led me to charges, man. Like, so I lost it all, humbly came back less than about 18 months. Within 18 months, I came back with no car, on the bus, and nowhere to live, because now my mom's like really disappointed because I'd left her in my most vital years. And then I came back with nothing. My Italian family was like, they'll never say they didn't like me at that time, but I think they were very disappointed.
For sure.
And I was like in a rock and a hard place. And my buddies in Ontario, who were like used to me being Tanner with money, wanted to go out on one of my first nights back. And I was living in my mom's friend's basement, this lady, Tracy, that she knew from church. And she had a basement suite, and I was staying there with her. And Tracy was away for the weekend. And one of the most shameful moments of my life, my friends were all going to the casino, which at that time my mom had forced me to sign out of. So I was going to have to sneak in. And I went and met my buddies, but to get the money to go do it, I pawned 2 of Tracy's guitars. And she came home a few days later, and I, of course, tried to lie. I lost that money in about 5 minutes at the casino. And you know what, dude? It was like, I always tell the story, like it wasn't like a gambling addiction that had me. It was like, it was a popularity. It was,
you wanted to be part of the group, man.
Yeah, man. My friends all had stuff
I
at that point because they were like working part-time, and I wanted all that stuff. I didn't have the whereabouts to know that that's how you needed to do it. So I would get it in the most toxic ways.
Yeah.
And that was probably, honestly, I've had some low points in my life, but that was a pretty low moment, because I'd been saved quite a few times from actually gaining charges. Up until then, I was a youth, and it was always little minimal thefts or smoking pot. The river rats would get us on their motorbikes, little things like that, a lot of underage drinking. And then it was like probation, missing school. So until then, I'd never really been in trouble. But Tracy came home, called my mom, and I faced it. I went with my mom, with the 2 police officers, to the pawn shop, had to tell them, hey, I was in here yesterday. I sold these 2 guitars. One of them was already sold. My mom, I'll never forget, the cop's like, well, we got to buy that one back. And I watched my mom walk over to the debit machine, hand shaking because she doesn't have the money. The cops are looking at me. And like, I remember in that moment, I felt shame for like the first time, because it was like, these guys were looking at me like, you piece of shit, you're doing this to your mom. But it was also the first time in my life I ever was humble and took ownership. And I went to court 3 weeks later, and the judge looked at me and was like, well, I'm not letting you off, on this. You're going to get probation, but like, what are you going to do with your life? And I looked back at her and I was like, I'm going to join the military. She's like, do you know anything about the military? And I'm like, nope, but my buddy Jeff Dunham just joined last week. My buddy Phil's joining this week. I'm going to join the military. She goes, I will see you in here in 2 weeks, Mr. Wilson, and you need to at least go talk with the recruiter.
Wow.
So this was in Hamilton, Ontario, because that's where the court was that I was in trouble. I went and my mom drove me right to the recruiters with Tracy. So, and she was my mom's best friend at the time. And at the time, man, to be honest, I was just telling people what they wanted to hear. I had no interest.
Yeah, I was going to. Okay, because, you know, the military is a good route for people who don't know what the fuck they're doing with their life, who need identity, purpose, structure, routine, escape, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, like, what was that for you? But you were just at a point in your life where you needed to tell somebody something where it made sense for them. Not so much that it made sense for you, but this is like how you accept these actions and me moving forward. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, like it was like one of the first times in my life where I told somebody what they wanted to hear, but it's also because I had no fucking clue what I was doing.
You had no idea.
Right. And like, but I realized there that I was not a kid anymore and there were people had expectations. And I threw out like, it didn't end up panning out into like joining right away because I went to go join. And the guy's like, I met resistance right away. And I at that point, like any resistance, I'm going the other way or over top, down, anything but go through that resistance. And he's like, well, you're facing like adult charges right now because I was 18 for theft. You're going to have a hard time getting in, even though like Afghanistan was spooling up. And so I came back. He told me, he's like, you just got to go get this paperwork from the court, go talk to the judge. Next time you go in and somebody's got to write a letter, but I was having none of it. So I went home. Back to my grandpa's place because by then they'd accepted me in. And within a day, I was so frustrated that I said, screw it, I'm going out west to work. And I applied and had an interview the same day at the Castle Mountain Chalet in between Lake Louise and Banff.
Okay.
And so within 2 days, I was out the door, man. And I went to the court and told the judge that like, hey, I'm going out west. And the judge was like, wait, what's going on? So they put me on probation. And gave me a probation officer out west. Okay. And I came out and worked. So this is from now 18 to 19. Worked at the Executive Lodge in Kananaskis, Alberta. Worked at the Delta Lodge as a housekeeper in Kananaskis. I worked at the Voyager Inn in Banff. I worked at the Castle Mountain Chalets in Lake Louise. Always living in like Staffacom and partying. But what I really
I was about to say, that sounds like a more partying
It was amazing,
vibe too.
but I got fired from every job.
Oh, you did?
But you could always, that was back when like, I got fired from the executive. So then I went to the Nikiska Ski Hill and asked, and they put me in the working banquets there. And I worked there for a week.
What
and
are you
then
getting
I went
fired
back
for?
to executive. Not showing up.
Fucking around.
Telling off my bosses, thinking I'm smarter than everybody else, selling weed. Once I got kicked out for selling weed. But it was like everybody there was, I felt so accepted because there were like people from Brazil. There was dudes from England.
Oh, nice.
But it was also like a time where everybody else in my life was being productive, all my friends and stuff back home. And I was being a free bird, like learning, I was hiking. It was cool, but it again wore out. And then I was like just turned 19 and I met this girl and got in a very like toxic relationship, of course, like every teenage guy does. And we moved in together in Calgary, lived with my mom, who then my mom and sister moved out to Calgary because like they were chasing me down. And I got myself in trouble because I stopped going to my probation. And the worst part about it is it was on month 14 out of 18. And so then I had a warrant for my arrest in Calgary. And by then I was out of the mountains, living in Calgary, working at a cabinet shop. So now I'm a cabinet maker, trying to be, sucked at it. And I had this warrant out for my arrest. And this was like a year after this whole military thing. So then I had to go turn myself in. And I don't know if you've ever turned yourself in or talked to somebody that has, but it's like there's getting caught and like getting arrested. It's so crazy because it just like happens and the next thing you know, you're in the cell. But when you have to prepare for it, it's a different beast. And also when you're 19 years old and you're going in on just probation, that you skipped your probation meeting, you're thinking, okay, I'm good, I'm going to get let out. No, man, they straight up took me into jail, handcuffed me, put me in a jail cell. And that was like the first time that I really realized like, yo, this ain't for me. There was 5 or 6 Indigenous kids that I was in the same cell with, and they'd been gotten charged with like a group robbery. And of course I befriended them and got to know them. And they were talking about their life and the stuff that they'd been through. And this is in Calgary. And I was like, yo, man, like what? I got sick to my stomach. I was like, what am I doing here? I thought about my mom. I thought about my sister, who by then's off being a nurse at university. I thought about all my friends from elementary school. And I'm like, I'm the smartest one out of the group. I got the best social skills out of the group. My mom's killing herself because she knows like what I'm capable of. And I'm here with these kids, right? That just robbed an old lady. And I'm eating my cheese sandwich, and I couldn't get it out of my head that like, this is not where I belong. And I left. I got out 48 hours late. Like, I don't know how they were able to hold me for so long. I think it was like I had asked for a lawyer. Anyways, it was ridiculous because all it was a probation breach. But then I was back in the court, and the judge asked me again, like, hey, I noticed last year you told the Ontario judge you like this is what you were planning on doing. Where are you at with the military thing? And I said, I'm gonna go do it. And within a week, bro, I was swearing in Calgary. Now,
what was that process like for you? Because I tried to help a youth who, again, when I worked at the addiction treatment center in Ottawa, he wanted to join the military. He had unrealistic visions. He's like, I want to be jumping out of helicopters with him. Yeah. I'm like, bro, you're not going to be Rambo. Yeah. Like, it's a lot different than what you think it's going to be. But I was helping him through the process to get into the armed forces. And it's like they do some serious testing on it. What was it like back then?
So this was like 2007. Okay. So at that point in the world, if you think about where the world was at, like it was 9/11 happened. Then the Americans and Canadians were searching for Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan initially, but then somehow the Americans ended up in Iraq.
Here, put this mic a little bit closer. Yeah, right there.
The Americans ended up in Iraq, and the Canadians, being the peacekeeping nation we are, they went to Afghanistan. They continued operations in Afghanistan because it had more of like the peacekeeping stuff. So at the time, Canada was ramping up their military, and literally, man, like it's one of the funniest things because you hear lots of military guys say it, but the recruiter asked me, are you into camping? And I was like, yeah. He goes, are you athletic? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, do you like to shoot a gun? I said, no, I never really have. And he goes, well, let me tell you about the infantry. And first it was, you can go back to Ontario. You can join the Royal Canadian Regiment, and you'll be posted in either Petawawa, which was about 2 hours from where I was from, or you'll go to Gagetown on the East Coast. And then he said, or you can be Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, and you can either get posted here to Edmonton, Calgary, or you can get posted to Shiloh, Manitoba. And so I was like, okay, well, like, I don't want to go back to Ontario. My family was like, come back to Ontario, yada, yada. I was like, no, my buddy Jeff had already joined. He was a Patricia. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to join. And I left like 3 weeks after that. But in basic, in my swearing in ceremony, I met these two guys, Scott and Brent, who are still my friends to this day. And we swore in together. And then in that week that I was waiting, my grandfather passed away. But I did get to go home and see him, but I missed the funeral because I was at basic training. It was my first week. And my family was like, no, he would want you to stay. So I flew to Borden, Ontario, just outside of Barrie, did my 14 weeks of basic. Passed somehow.
How was that? What was that experience like? Bro. Was it difficult?
Well, I'd gone from, the biggest thing to remember is I don't just have ADD, like I got severe ADHD. And so the military doesn't necessarily, first I didn't say I had ADD because at that time they weren't wanting people with ADHD, right? Because it's very regimented, very organized. But to put it to you like this, to sum it up, I called my mom in week 4 of basic training and cried on the phone for an hour. And guess what it was about? My underwear, I couldn't get it 2 inches by 2 inches. And I was getting berated every inspection parade, every morning. And I cried. But that was like, I got broken. They broke me. I realized like, I can't solve it all. I don't know it all. I'm lacking in a lot of areas. And I needed that moment. It was one of the biggest moments of my life. And she's like, honey, you're okay. This is what you're there for. You're not there to get your underwear 2 by 2. You're there to obsess over trying to meet the standard. You're obsessing over realizing you can't get it perfect. You can't get it right. That's what they're teaching you. And my military career really took off from there. I was like, oh, I understand it now. I get it. I get what they're trying to do. But I think what kept me going was I hated the work. I hated the runs. I don't like shooting guns, but I freaking love the brotherhood.
Yeah.
I loved it, man.
When I watch movies or I hear a story, that part of it looks like something that you just can't replicate in any other scenario. And I feel like the camaraderie, those shared experiences, especially if you're somebody who undergoes like extreme duress with these individuals, man, that is a bond that I can't even imagine.
Well, that basic, the guys I was talking about in basic there that I swore in with, Scott, my buddy Scott Walker, we just went in like that. So that's 2007. It's 2026. That's 19 years. We just went in November and I met him down in, he lives in the States now, he lives in Kentucky. We met down in Minnesota and did the Boundary Waters canoe for 7-8 days. That's how strong that bond is.
Yeah, that's
right. That's like, and I haven't probably seen the guy in 8 or 9 years now because he's married and like lives down there. But dude, it was like, it took me right back. So I think that's like, that's what I became addicted to, was that I'd always struggled, but what I'd never done is struggled as a group. And gone through something. Like I'd been on sports teams, but I'd played at high levels, but I'd always experienced success. But I'd never been put in a position where you are made to fail, but you get to do it with a group. And I fell in love with it. I ate it up. But it also was like a double-edged sword because I wasn't fixing anything. I was just being contained. So I was stuck there in basic for 14 weeks. Then I got posted to Wainwright, Alberta here to do my battle school, which is my infantry specific training for 16 weeks. But then we got moved from here in Wainwright to Shiloh, Manitoba. And for that 16-week course, for 14 of those weeks, we thought we were staying to be 2 PPCLI in Shiloh, which was a tough spot for like a guy like me to be stuck in Brandon, Manitoba, like middle of nowhere. Guys ride sleds to work. But I battled through and we got through it. And the time that we were there, 2nd Battalion, which is what we were expected to join, they were deployed to Afghanistan. So we got trained by like guys who were rotating in and out. We got really good training, really realistic stuff. And that's all I've set my sights on doing.
I was just about to say, so your plan with the military was to become an infantryman because this recruiter just kind of like posed the question
I wanted to go to
you?
Afghanistan. Like,
why did you want to go there? Because you also said that like, well, based on what you said before, it was like when it came time for these like all this conflict, you were kind of like, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah.
But then the biggest conflict in the world at the time, you're like, I want to go to that.
Yeah, it was odd because it was like the first time, I think it was the first time in my life that I realized that I've always up till then thought that I'd hated just being a number. But there's a lot of peace in that. And I think the one thing that I liked about the military was there was a job to do and everybody around me was going to do everything it took to do that job. And I'd never experienced stuff like that. Even on a sports team, man, like I was tired of I've always been a guy that like, I'll put it maximum effort. And what drove me crazy was like buddy that wasn't training on the side and he blew the game, or, you know, people that didn't take it serious enough. So naturally going and like finding a mission focused thing to take part in was easy. Like it was like there was a purpose, and really what it meant to me was like it was the first time in my life somebody ever handed me purpose and said, here you go, here's your mission, this is what you're meant to do. And I ate it up. It sucked, but once I made it through that first 28 weeks of training, I got posted to Edmonton and was just immersed in that military life from 2007 till then we went overseas in 2009 to Afghanistan.
Yeah, so tell me about your first deployment to Afghanistan and what what you were told versus what you experienced. Because I know one of my foster fathers, he adopted a son, Jody, who went to the military, very serious guy, and he was sent to Afghanistan probably, I don't know what year, probably around the similar time. He was a mechanic who worked on tanks.
Yeah.
And I only talked to him briefly, but he was like, man, he did not have a good experience there, even as like a mechanic working on a tank. So I can't imagine like an infantryman. I don't even really know what your role or responsibilities were. Like, walk me through all of that.
Yeah. So the infantry is like, the easiest way to think of the infantry is like, I mean, it was not like Saving Private Ryan, but you know those guys that are in Saving Private Ryan, the guys that storm the beaches, the little characters that you buy, the little green.
That's what I picture.
The ground troops. That's what it is.
That's what I picture.
That's what the old school idea of infantry is. Like the cavalry back in the day, those guys rode on horses. They eventually became tankers.
Yeah.
Which now they're tankers. The ground troops are the ground troops. So PPCLI is Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, which means they do everything on foot, so they say. But we've become more mechanized over the years. They have the LAVs, which are the light armored vehicles, the like tank ones with the big tires.
Okay.
And those carry guys in the back. So you get put into a regiment, which is the PPCLI. And in that regiment, there's 3 battalions. So there's 1st Battalion PPCLI here in Edmonton, 2nd Battalion, which is in Shiloh, 3rd Battalion's also here in Edmonton, but they're more considered the light one. The other one's the mechanized. So I got posted here to CFB Edmonton. I never lived on base because I had a few buddies that were already in, so I lived off base. And right away, I got placed. Originally, I was in 3rd Battalion PPCLI because I got pegged to do my jump course, like to be airborne parachute. So I got put there. They're the guys that like wear the maroon berets, and for a while I was fixated on that. And then in 2008, the opportunity came where they said, "Hey, Wilson, you can either go do your jump course or you can go on Task Force 309 with 1 PPCLI and go, but you're going to have to move regiments. You're going to have to walk down the road, go to work at a new place every day." And I was like, yeah, screw it, I'm going. Right. So about half of us from our course stayed at 3VP, and you'll hear me call it VP. It's just what we call, instead of PPCLI, we just say VP. So the bunch of guys stayed at 3VP. I went to 1VP, joined a whole new platoon of guys that had come from all over.
Wait, why did you want to go do that instead of waiting?
I wanted to go. I wanted to go to war right away.
Okay, so
I wanted to go use the skills I had.
Okay,
yeah, it was cool. Like we had just come off our courses where we were like,
so you're like, I'm ready. You're like a pit bull on a leash. You're
yeah,
because
in your training you get to learn all the weapons,
That's
right?
crazy.
You grenade launcher. You know, you're firing the M72 like a rocket over your shoulder, throwing. Like it was pretty cool, and we just got off all that, so I wanted to keep it going.
Right.
And then, I came to 1 PPCLI, moved over, and they accepted me pretty good. And then I got tasked. So it's a platoon of 40 guys. Mm-hmm. And in that platoon, there's 4 different sections. So there's headquarters section, which has like the platoon signaler, who's an infantry guy that's good with the radio. That's the job I got tasked with because I was good at talking.
Okay.
My fire team partner was the platoon commander. So the one guy that's the officer. And then there's like platoon warrant officer, and then in there's 3 sections, and each section's got 8 or 9 guys, and they each have a section commander, second in command, and then it's just the troops, right? So it's a hierarchy. If you think like the 3 sections are the fighting sections, then the headquarters section, and they make up the platoon. Platoon commander's like up here, but he's in headquarters. All the brass is in headquarters. The fighting troops are here.
Okay.
They each have like a sergeant that runs them. So I got placed in that section. We went and did about a year of workup training, in where you go and live and fight as a platoon. The Canadian Forces sends like a national testing squad over to Wainwright, of like where you wear these vests with like sensors on them. You go, the officers have to get through certain missions, certain checks in the boxes. Canada really does a great job at like training mission specific. So we already kind of knew what our mission was going to be. Like they bring in brown people to act as Taliban in Wainwright, and you go raid the villages and you do it with like blanks.
What?
We got to do like, we flew to Petawawa, rappelled out of helicopters for training, got to do like urban ops with paintballs. So like we fought against another force with paintballs.
That sounds fun, but it's also like you're preparing for like real combat. So it's sort of twisted, but it's like,
it was cool.
It
was cool. It was like
cool. Real life call.
Basically, it was like if we weren't in the field, which we were a lot, which I think of like the 12 months of workup training, they call it, we were in Wainwright for 9 months of them. And the 3 months that we were home consist of like, you know, you hang out at the garrison during the day and then you go party at night. And it just repeats itself, right? It's just like you're in early 20s. You got nothing to do but train. And then you're going overseas, so you're already starting to build the machismo. You're like, oh, I'm going to have a tour. And and then next thing I knew, I was like standing in the hall at the LTF, which is the lecture training facility, with like 2,000 other troops from all around Edmonton and Alberta in their tan uniforms. The next thing I know, it's like our family's on one side. And they go, okay, we got to close this curtain while we do roll call. And the curtain closes. And I looked around and I'm like, where the hell am I? And I was so scared, man.
Yeah,
it was like real, right? Because up until then, you're like, okay, whatever. And then it's like, wow, man, like I might go. I know I still have a great chance of living.
Yeah.
But like, this is real. Like, this is like, I'm looking around. Everybody's serious. Everything just got dead serious. Like when I'll never forget, man. It's like, you know, the curtains in a gym, you can close it to make it half. That's what it was. And like this old guy's like, and I saw my family and they're like all waving by, and I had a girlfriend at the time. And then I did get to go back and say bye, but then it was like, boom, we were on the bus. And within 4 or 5 days, I'm on the helicopter and we're flying out to our platoon base. And then 7 days into that, we had our first death. So it was like, boom, boom, boom. It was all that workup training, 12 months. And then it was like, man, you're there. And when you're in a platoon like that, scared or not, there ain't no telling anybody, oh, I'm scared, I want to go home. You just like,
you're there.
Eat it. And I think, I don't want to say lucky, but the tour, like our first tour was 9 months long. And it was definitely much easier for me knowing, like I went in first because I was the signaler, so I went in with the platoon commander. We took over from a group called the Van Deus, the Royal 22nd Regiment. Nicknames the Van Deus. They're the French guys, weirdos. They're like, when we went and took over for them, they were like sitting tanning with Dixie cups on their genitals, like you would imagine a Frenchman, right? Like, hey, you're smoking a cigarette, like this, that. So we took over for them, and they had done nothing. I mean, I don't want to say they'd done nothing, because I also did a tour where by the end I was tired, but they stopped patrolling. They were getting in firefights all the time, so we had to really get to work as soon as we got there.
What was the mission?
So we were in this area called the Dan District, and Canada was in charge of Kandahar and the surrounding area. Kandahar is the second biggest city in Afghanistan.
Okay.
Over the years, the NATO had built a really big base called the Kandahar Airfield. We called it CAF. So the majority of our Canadian forces stayed on that base, which was like, if you picture Edmonton Airport, say it got like converted into a big base where they put, so it's still comfy. There were still good places to live. Some people slept in tents, some in buildings. But it was getting bombed. Like, they were always rocketing the airfield. So like we flew into the airfield, got to see what it was like to live on the base there. And then we were in our labs out the door to the forward operating base, which we call a FOB. So we got taken out there, flew out there, took over for the Van Deus, did like one patrol with them so they could show us the area. And then they left because their tour was done. The rest of our platoon came. And then on my third patrol, another section's first patrol, they had gone out and they were looking. The whole objective there is backing the Taliban out of these cities. So there's fighting, but they come in, and like, the hard part about the Taliban and the hard part about terrorism in general is they look like the general populace. And then they go pick up their gun out of the field, and they come back, they shoot at you, and then they drop their gun and go in the city, and they're in the bazaar. So they don't dress. It's not a conventional enemy, right? It's not a uniformed enemy. So it's like you walk through these towns having a presence and trying to push them out, trying to get them to move their weapons caches out of the city. Because what they were doing, which was all over the news, was like, they went to Muslim Sharia law when the Taliban took over. And under that law, women have to cover their face. Girls aren't allowed to go to school. So Canadian forces were going to all these towns where men would wait with acid and pour it on girls when they were going to school. And Canada just wanted to go establish a presence. And we started patrolling the AO, the area of operations. And like, every day we just patrol a little bit further, patrol a little bit further. But a lot of that was going on patrols where no one had been, or no one had been for a really long time. And I don't know if you ever heard the term IED, an improvised explosive device. So that's what all the training is about. You have engineers in your platoon, but like, it's an improvised explosive device, so it doesn't look like anything else. So basically the mission is, you're walking around trying to take this land and show that you're there and extend the boundary, but the whole time what you're doing is you're playing friggin' duck, duck, goose with IEDs. And the first week of tour, we got a wide open, we got split wide open, our platoon. One of the sections was out on patrol. And at the same time, we heard, and the smoke went up, and it was like not far from where we were, like maybe 200-300 meters, loud boom, smoke went up. My platoon warrant, who was already an experienced military guy, he'd already been to Afghanistan twice, went on the radio, which was up on the roof, started talking on the radio, didn't realize it, but took a step backwards and fell 25 feet off a roof. When he fell, like, he fell in this box of blankets, weirdly enough, but like his legs were broken. He's screaming. We hear that there's a casualty. My platoon commander, who's like a young whippersnapper, he's like 22, 23 years old. I'm his fire team partner. He goes, Wilson, let's get the radio. Let's go. So I went out with a different section, which they call IRF, which is Immediate Reaction Force. So one section's out. There's another section that sits back waiting, just in case they get in combat, or a casualty or whatever happens. They need support. So we sprint out the door, and we get to where they are. And it was my first real like awakening that I was in a war. I'm comfortable now telling the story, but it's like the section that they had been patrolling along this wall, and one of the engineers that was with them, that was embedded with our platoon, had veered off the path a little bit. And I'll never forget, there's like a crater in the path. Like, there's one of my guys, they're like knelt, like, just picture like a movie, like their faces are covered in soot. There's a massive hole, like probably 3 or 4 feet deep, a boot laying on the outside of the hole. I looked up, my buddy Trevor goes, look up. And I looked up, and there was a rifle that was like, dude, like, you know, like the carbine,
Mm-hmm.
there was a rifle that like, it was bent. Like it looked like it was like rubber, like it was bent and it was just hanging in the tree. And I looked up and then I looked at like all these dudes that I just trained with and they looked scared. They looked like they were shaking. There was one guy, shipmaker, he's like shaking, like wigging out. And I had to go up around, I was the radio guy. So I had to work my way up behind the engineer to make sure there was no other bombs, to get to the casualty, to then talk to the helicopter, to get the helicopter in. And then next thing I know, somehow I'm the guy loading this, he was Sapper Stephen Marshall was his name. He's from Calgary, loading him on the chopper. And I didn't think about it till a while after, but like his legs were so bad that the chopper's like there and the stretcher's here and his legs kind of like went off the chopper. And I was in a situation where it's like I had nothing else I could do other than like grab his mangled legs and like fold them on top of his shins and get him in the chopper. And he was already gone. He was already gone. Yeah. But yeah. And then it was like, we were back to the platoon house and business. And then it was like, wow, we're on tour. And we had like a crazy ass tour. But the interesting thing about it is in those 9 months, we lost a guy 7 days in and 7 days before we were leaving. So at the same time, it was like awesome that we got that welcome to war, so that it was the seriousness of it was in right away. Because that's the hardest part is like guys that haven't been to war, often there's a lag where you don't take it serious enough and that's how somebody gets hurt. But we got that feeling right away. So it was like, shit, we're here. And then we lost a guy with 7 days left on his last patrol. And it was this guy, Kevin Mackay. He's from Barrie, Ontario. He probably like, you know, they say all the good die young. He was like that guy, like everybody's friend. And he got killed 7 days before tour ended. Him and I made the platoon video that day.
What?
On my map.
How did he die?
We made a memorial video and he's like, I don't think we should put like all the guys that have died in there yet until tour's done. And he died that night, stepped on an IED. We responded to that scene as well.
How did you... That must have... Okay, there's so much to unpack.
There
here,
is.
man.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, so after the first experience of that young man who stepped on the ID and you had to help him on it, and you went back to wherever you went back to that night, what was going through your head, man? Like, what were your thoughts? Were you just like, you had so many tasks and responsibilities to do that you kind of kept busy that way before you processed it? Or were you like, holy shit,
well,
man,
I think that's where like, so I was, my radio name there was 41 Pronto, which Pronto meaning like I'm the signaler. So I was busy because in this platoon house that we lived at, there was observation posts. So each one of those observation posts had a radio that I somehow was responsible for, like the communications with back to Kandahar, aircraft, whatever. So thank God that kept me busy, right? Also, it's hard to feel sorry for or like scared in those situations because all you're thinking is like, it's very real. And that's where the brotherhood really comes in, right? Like I didn't want to be scared because I needed to be there for my bros.
I was just about to say that I feel like after going through an intense experience like that, like you said, there were guys there who were shaking and obviously scared shitless. How could you not be?
Yeah.
You would need a strong presence to be like, guys, let's fucking get it together.
Yeah.
We have a mission to do. We have to march forward. You knew what you signed up for. You need somebody to kind of like snap you out of that daze and get you back, or be that person yourself for other people. Is that accurate or not?
And it was, what it really is like, it's about war.
Yeah.
But really what it becomes is it's a social experiment. 40 young men with vast different experiences going through real-time trauma and the real possibility of it daily and trying to live with all of that. You almost like, it turns into survival where there are some guys that handled it really well. There's also some stuff that like I think me and a collective group of guys aren't very proud of. Like there was one guy that was really struggling and we mocked him relentlessly because at the time it was like, you got to be tough. Like, what do you mean you can't take this? And he got sent home from PTSD on tour because like he was going to shoot himself. Jeez. Right. And like but that's part of the military machine, which I'm okay with, is that's why they're all young men with nothing to lose. With like, I didn't have kids at the time. I had a girlfriend who at the time I was overseas was cheating on me. But yeah, it was like, I can't tell you, like, it was like a Canadian pride thing. What it was like, man, I'm here with some dudes that I absolutely love. There's nothing we can do about it right now. Got to look out for each other. And I got to be strong, because if I'm not strong, like, they're not going to have confidence in me. They're not going to do their job. And like, I'm not really like that, but that's how good the military is at mindset and building a team. They're not even good at building a team. They're good at building a high functioning team, the best in the world at building a high functioning team, because they get everybody to buy into that common vision. Like you'll hear me use that word a lot, like common vision. Even in my youth work, it's like building a common vision as a team. You know, even at work, it's like I like environments where everybody's on the same page, and that was why the military was easy, right? It was like the mission's to get home, boys. Like nothing, don't overthink it. Let's get the war done and let's get home, because it doesn't become about the war when you're there. Once somebody dies, you're like, okay, man, I just want to survive and get home. And yeah, it's like it's weird because it's such a polarizing topic for me. Like in my life, so many people have been like, oh, I can't wait to hear about Afghanistan or that, but like for me, it was just getting to do the job. Like that's what a lot of guys will tell you. Like it's like being a plumber, and they tell you, yeah, you're just going to train as a plumber, and then you're never going to go and get to go actually be a plumber. We were actually getting to go be the plumber for 9 months, and what a feeling to be a young man living in a war for 7 months. I've never felt like more of what I would have called at the time a man, right? The pride. That's where like it was like I'm a prideful guy, and my pride was even more fed in that 100%. Moment, because people are sending you stuff. It's all about you, which I appreciate it all, right? But yeah, it was an interesting time. One time I'll show you the videos, because my buddy did like he did an MTV Cribs at the time, because he had nothing else to do other than screw around. Sure. He did like an MTV Cribs where he talks about like this room, and we had like our weight bench was barbed wire bales, and like, you know, those triangle fence posts. Like that go on the ground, and it's like to hold wire back and forth. They're kind of shaped like a T. Yeah. We had those was like our bar. Okay. And we had the barbed wire on either side. We had built our gym. We had like a poker table. We'd host these poker tournaments. We had video games. Damn. We found a way to live. I really learned how to survive with not much. Yeah. I learned the power of like how a great conversation and sitting around a fire with a bunch of guys, the deepness we would go, the levels of depth that we'd have conversations about childhood. You saw when people are scared, you see them at their rawest form. It's like jail. 100%. People are scared, so they open up. Yeah. Right? You don't know if tomorrow's your next day. So like these guys are talking about their childhood. And what I realized on that tour was most of the guys in the military, man, are fatherless men. And the queen, the king, the unit is their dad. Right? And like, so it was comforting. Like I'd go back any second, not for the war, but for the boys, man. Like it was like a long camping trip with your best friends that didn't end. Yeah. It was cool. It was really cool.
I remember watching the movie Jarhead. Have you ever watched that?
I have, yeah.
Dude, I don't even remember it now, but I remember the feeling of when it ended, how compelled I was to like join the military. I was like, they are fighting for, like you said, for this like bigger reason that you can't even like so much more significant than what you are, what you think your purpose is. You're fighting for like what's more powerful than that, and then being alongside all these people and having, because we truly are animals who need structure, routine, work, purpose, right? We function best when we have something to do. And when I see youth who are struggling the most, it's mostly because they have no meaningful use of time. They just have all this unstructured free time. They wake up at 3-4 p.m. They're fucking around, man. They don't have anything to live for. So, yeah, I remember watching that movie, and by the end of it, I was like, man, what am I doing with my life? Like, I need to, like, join up in something like this. And yeah, there is something alluring about that lifestyle, the excitement, and just being an objective viewer and hearing your story, you could see how the needs that were being met through this lifestyle of drugs and drug dealers and gambling and all that were now being met over here, because you were getting the guns and the war, but the camaraderie, the same need, underlying need, was being met, just in a more purposeful way, more meaningful way.
I think it's that transition from badass youth to military is the way that the military was built in the States. Like, it used to legitimately be a court option to go to military or jail time. Okay. And that's what people don't like. Like biker gangs are vets. Like Hell's Angels was Vietnam vets, man. Yeah. And so I think like it was the brotherhood. It was like, I always tell people now, like, gangs don't scare me, man, because I honestly am part of the biggest gang in the world, which is being a veteran. If I needed to have 20 veterans, I'd post on Facebook, there'd be 20. I might not even know them, but just the fact that they're a veteran, they're going to come to my back. And like, that gave me something that I never had in my life. It gave me that, like, the male camaraderie, man. Like, I was the easy guy to poke fun at, because I was like the softer guy. I grew up with a single mom and a sister, like kind of feminine. So I got some, like, I was always that metrosexual kind. Like, I'm not homosexual, but like, I could hang out with a gay guy.
That's right.
No problem, because I'm open.
That's right.
So I offered what those guys gave me, which, like, I was friends with some badasses, man. Like some guys that now are probably touting guns and they're Alberta separatists. Like, most of them were half racist, but there was something in that brotherhood that I had never had before. Like, I didn't even have any brothers growing up. I had one sister. So yeah, I got some good and bad ideas of what male leadership were. But most importantly, I got a real lesson on how short life was, how precious life is, and what a true team that focuses on a common vision is capable of. Like you see, like, at work, when the team gets rolling, like, it's unstoppable, man, when 5 people are passionate about the same thing. It's unbelievable when 2 people are passionate. Like, when you meet another youth worker and you're on a case team with somebody that is as passionate as you are, is it not beautiful?
Dude, it's great.
That's what the military is like. There's 40 other guys like that. And yeah, there's some like black holes, but I've never felt, I don't think I'll ever be able to feel that sense of purpose again. And that, it might be what I'm chasing forever, which I've had to come to grips with. It's part of like why I went down like the addictions recovery journey, because I've always been looking for that edgy way to recreate that, to get a mission done with.
I feel like a lot of military guys go through that, man. Because, dude, how can you just go through helping some guy on a chopper who just got his legs blown off, who's dead, and then making a video with your friend, and then experiencing this, and then go back, and then go to the rec center and have a swim? Like, bro,
that's exact. Like, coming, I think the war was whatever. Like, honestly, the war was quite entertaining, and I have not, like, there are some really negative memories. But to me, it was like, we'd been trained. Like, we knew that guys were going to get killed. There was already 125 guys that had died before we went. It wasn't a new thing. The hard part was the world kind of sucks, man. Like, over there, it was like you come back here and like the things that I took for granted there, or that I took for granted before I left, like, you know, there was times when we didn't shower for 30 days. And like, now what I have a really hard time with, and had an even more hard time with when I came back, was, man, people complain a lot.
I know.
Like, holy cow. And it only gets worse, right? Because, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just everything's of convenience now.
Oh, this is it. I know.
Everything. Like, you can get, if you want to go make money, if I wanted to go make money right now, there's a way that I could on my phone. Like, you can just get whatever you want. And I think that was a brief period of my life where, like, I couldn't just pick up the phone and call somebody. I couldn't just walk to McDonald's. And I really grew from that. Yeah. You know?
Dude, I struggle with this a lot when, especially with youth too, who are like that youth who couldn't take no because he didn't get the shirt he wanted. And then, you know, I talk youth who are just complaining about whatever it is. And I'm like, dude, you are living in a place that's paid for by taxpayers. You play Xbox all day. You got DoorDash bringing you food and people driving you wherever you go. And like, you still have the audacity to be like, you know, oh, life sucks. Everything, I'm depressed. And like, okay, and again, it's not that simplistic. It goes in layers. And like I said, everyone's life's a perspective of their own. But I struggle sometimes, especially because, like yourself, you know, I had periods of homelessness. I went through some serious struggle where, like, you know, you're not eating for several days, and you come to have a deep appreciation for, the power of a shower, man. Yeah. Or like just these little things that I guess that other people just don't see because they haven't experienced it or they haven't witnessed it. And I find it really difficult to like, have conversations sometimes with people who are just so ungrateful. And
when you take the fear of dying out of life, it's really it's really quite beautiful. When death, like I wouldn't say death definitely does not scare me. I've seen it in like the worst ways possible. So like the idea of my own death now, I'm like, whatever. I can't possibly. I'd have to be really unlucky to die as horribly as I've seen people die. But it provided like a new fear, which was like never living to then I became addicted to like living my life to the fullest, because now I'm obsessed with the idea that it could end. Right. And that's where like it's got its positives, like but now like one of the biggest things people tell me is like, Tanner, relax. Right. Like the helicopter dad thing. I'm a helicopter dad because I've unfortunately seen like blown up kids. Now it's not the same world.
Sure.
And those are things that I got to work with, but that's like the real struggle with any sort of, like that's the struggle with cops, firefighters, paramedics, social workers, is that transition time to really go talk about what you've seen. Like I probably haven't told that story about folding Marshall's legs into the chopper to anybody other than my therapist. But after this much time in my life, I realized the power of getting it out. And now that's like my life's mission with people, is especially these kids. It's like, bro, let's talk about it. Cry to me.
That's good, man.
Make it hard to talk about, because you are going to need to talk about it one day, and you're never going to find success until you do. And that's the truth about trauma. You get fake success, right? But like, I already feel lighter just telling that story. And it's like, I want to always preach what I tell, because I do realize it's like a very trauma-ridden world. There's a lot of people out there with traumas. The hard part about the military one was they teach you to be so proud of the fact that you're in the military. What I struggled for a long time was I felt like better than everybody. Like my trauma was from war. Leave me alone. What does a car accident victim know about what I'm feeling? And then now that I've gotten older, I've realized, man, there's some civilian people out there that weren't in the military, especially working with some of these kids, that I've experienced 10 times worse than folding legs into, you know what I mean? Like people have held their parent while they overdose, and you like, was it a pride thing for me? Like, it's that pedestal thing. It's like, and ultimately I needed to get help. So instead of getting help, I was like just putting myself on a pedestal and judging everybody else. And like that severely affected me. I ended up going on another tour after, but like, that was the real struggle of war. It wasn't like the guns and the whatever. It was like coming home, man. And it's, how do you come home from that and then go drive down Jasper Ave or go to White Ave and party? And it's like, you know, the first couple times I'd see a fight, guess who was involved? I just go start fighting. I saw two people fighting. I didn't like it. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd go fight them both. I was that guy. Even now at like my kids' sports games, if somebody's bringing anger or like making a big deal, I end it real quick. Cause I'm like, no way, I'm not having that aggressive posture shit here. Right. Cause I already been through enough of that. But yeah, all of that came down to like, didn't cope from it well.
Well, I would think that at the time in the military, it wasn't like it is now, where there are people like yourself who are saying, hey, open up, man, share your story, because when you share your story, it becomes lighter to carry. That messaging probably wasn't there, right? It was kind of like, strap your bootstraps and get on with life, right? Suck it up, tough it up, and move forward.
We got 4 days in Cyprus after.
What's
decompression. So we went to Cyprus from Afghanistan. They flew us to Cyprus, and you stay in a resort with other civilians. It's the weirdest thing. The biggest thing they have, like for mental health, was they have 2 padded rooms that if they let you drink, and the only place you weren't allowed to go was the strip club, because there was like sex trafficking going on or whatever. So we weren't allowed. And guess where we all went? Was that strip club, right?
That's right.
But like we were basically to our own devices for 4 days. And I know that like the Canadian Forces has taken accountability for how they handled mental health after.
Yeah.
But that's the real thing, is like, it was not only like normal. It wasn't normal men going to war and seeing all that. It was like people with trauma. Right. And I think like, I realized that when I was working with people downtown Edmonton, it was like, there's a lot of trauma people are experiencing on the streets. And then you couple that with the trauma that they experience to get to the streets, and it makes it almost unsurvivable. Right. So it's that double. It's like getting traumatized when you're vulnerable. And I think that's what happens with guys who go experience that, is you come back to a world that just doesn't feel familiar, and you're just trauma. Every fight you get in after, you're more traumatized. And it's just pushing you further from just talking to somebody about that tour like we're doing right now. Right. Like if I'd have done this 15 years ago, like, would my life have changed? But I don't know. Was I ready to talk about it? Did I have that much insight? Yeah, it's trippy, man. And to think that I went again, like, that was the scarier one. Because by then I was like, I knew the risk. And then I was just scared the whole time. My fiance was pregnant when I went back. So it was like.
Yeah, because I would imagine if I was deployed and I had people in my platoon who were getting blown up on patrol, anytime I'd have to go on patrol, dude, I don't know. It'd be
Brandon, we were
I'd
looking
have to
at
really do some Jedi mind tricks.
my
to
buddy
get myself
Trevor. Like
out
you
there.
just become normal. Like my buddy Trevor was sick. He would look at us before. Like I got blown up overseas, and on December 30th, I stepped on an IED.
You did?
I did, yeah. And it the way they had it set up, it was like a pressure plate. So I stepped on it, and everything they build at home. So like they use like a metal like HVAC tube, and they would stuff it one end with like cement, and then they'd put shrapnel and then explosives so that it would blow up and like spread and it wouldn't kill anybody, but it maims guys. And I stepped on one. I'll never forget. We were like doing a patrol, and there was like a corner like this, and we're coming down, and right here in the corner there was this random guy squatting. And Afghans squat a lot. They've got like, you know, like the yogi pose where they squat on the base of their feet. He's like this old guy, and he's just squatting, and I'm walking with my radio, and my radio was just big enough to like poke up over the wall. And these guys do everything IED, so they're improvised. So they see you, and then boom, they press it, blow up, and you never get to see them when they do it. So I'm walking, and my platoon commander goes around the corner, and then I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, this is so weird that this guy's on the corner. We haven't searched him. And then it's like he blew up. Like all of a sudden it was like, and I'll never forget. It was like I went in the air. It was like slow motion. I'm in the air. While I'm in the air, I'm thinking, that's it. I'm done. My body is spinning. I hit the ground. As I'm laying on the ground, I'm like on my back. I look up, my platoon warrant is running towards me, and he's like looking, he goes, IED. And I didn't know what to say. I go, no shit. Like, no shit. He's screaming at me. All you hear is like, starting to come back. All I looked back was, I'm like, that guy just blew himself up in the corner. I turn on and look. No, man, that guy's still crouched, covered in dust. Like, you know, like after 9/11 when they showed all those people covered in dust. That's what he was like, in the corner, unscathed. I looked at the hole. It was right where my foot was, but like right behind it. So what had happened is, come to find out later, when it had gone in the ground, it had rained a few days later, shifted the pressure plate. So the pressure plate was like this. The tube that the bomb was in shifted like that. So I walked over it, and it blew behind me. It hit this American guy. He goes down. He wasn't screaming or anything. He's like laying on the ground. He was actually a social scientist. And then he had an American troop with him that was like his security. Okay. And they were trying to figure out the social atmosphere of where we were, getting to know the elders, all that, and like build that. So they were patrolling with us. And he's like on his side, and he turns around, bro, and he was missing. Like, you know that scene in Terminator when his face is melting off and you can see like the metal? He's like, picture being able to see half the jaw. That's what it was like. And his skin's like dangling down. And he's crazy. He looks at me and my platoon warrant and goes, get a picture for my book. And we're like, what? He goes, get a picture for my book.
What?
His like bleeding, like his flesh is hanging, and the guy wants a picture
for
his book.
That's
like
crazy.
Holy shit, dude.
Wow.
And his bodyguard guy was like not even an active military guy. He was like an ex-Vietnam vet. And so he was triggered, like he was panicked. We had a bomb sniffing dog with us at the time. The dog's going nuts. And that same day, within 10 minutes after we got hit, we heard a radio call that said the planes left the airport. And we're like, what the hell? So we're already pretty triggered because like that just happened to us. And then in the distance, we hear the biggest mushroom cloud I've ever seen. It was the day those 5 Canadians were killed. And the Canadian reporter, Christy Lang. So we heard that, because you get to hear the Taliban talk.
Sure.
And it's called the ICOM radio. And we heard them say the plane has left the building, or the plane has left the runway. And right after we hear that, we're looking at each other. Our interpreter's like, because it was in Pashtun, the way they talk. And then you hear, so I got blown up. 5 people got killed. We go in a comms lockdown. All I want to do when we get back is call home.
Yeah.
Right? I can't. So finally we beg, hey, Sarge, the guys that were in the bomb today, can we call? So I need to talk to my mom. I didn't even call my mom first. We're still on comms lockdown. I call my girlfriend, this Jesselyn girl at the time. Great girl, but like we shouldn't have been together. She was with a guy. So here I am. I don't even call my mom. Don't even call buddies. I call her, and she's drunk and with a guy. So I call my mom. I spent 2 hours that night on the roof talking to my mom. My mom, come to think of it, was like, she's like, I wondered what the hell was going on. I thought it was you. My mom was in Future Shop. You remember those?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So she's in Future Shop, and they've got all the TVs everywhere. Yeah. And the news is on, breaking news that 5 Canadians have been killed. And we're on comms lockdown. I can't call. Oh, my God. So as I'm like talking to her, she burst down in tears. Yeah, and I'm like, and then, so of course I didn't have the heart to tell her then that like, okay, I didn't die, but I was in a bomb. I was going to tell her like, hey, this scared me. How do I work through it? But the fact that she thought I died.
Through that, yeah.
And then they lifted the comms lockdown, and you know, we didn't even know that at that point 5 Canadians had been killed, but they had, and I, it was like that one. That's December 30th for me, and that's my born again day. And then the very next day, we lost another platoon commander. He was killed. So December 30th and 31st are tough days for me.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
But yeah, that's my like born again story, dude. I like flying through the air. That truth about it, like feeling slow-mo, like it was like it was
when you were on the ground, because I would imagine if something did happen to you, you probably wouldn't feel it anyway because your body would just go into complete
shock. You played Call of Duty and like somebody drops a grenade or a flashbang and it like makes it like ding. It's exactly what it's like.
And were you freaking out like, oh shit, like checking your legs, making sure, and then once you realized you were fine, I mean, what a blessing, dude. You stepped on one. That's insane.
Yeah, it was wild, man. Like it was, I remember like you get taught to look for secondaries, and I'm a scaredy cat. Like, to be honest, like I'm kind of a scared guy about a lot of things, but I think I have a lot of courage, so I can like battle through it. And we're like checking for secondaries, and there was like, you know, like meshing that goes in behind drywall. So it's like got little holes. Yep. They do everything with mud. And occasionally, sometimes they use that stuff to like back it. So then they pat the mud on. Well, one of the walls had like a chip in it. And it looked like there was like a blade of like a rocket in there, like another. So I like ran away and I was like, there's another one. And we had eventually got back to the leaguer that we were in, which is like a circle with all the labs. And all my platoon mates came running up to me and hugging me. And I'm like, what? Like, what's going on? They're like, dude, we thought you were dead. I totally forgot. Like I was talking on the radio when I stepped on the bomb. So like I was giving our coordinates, and then, so they said all of a sudden they heard, and then, cause you often like, you don't hear the bomb first, you see it, and then the sound travels.
Right.
So they see it, then they hear it. And then at the same time they're hearing me, and then they just hear me screaming, IED. And so all my buddies, closest friends, you don't realize they're all waiting. And then you hear that 5 Canadians have been killed. So when I got back, there's all these guys that like, you know, you wonder if they even like you or like whatever, and they're hugging you and guys are crying. And yeah, it was wild, man. Wildest. It was my born again day, my second chance at life. I should have been dead, or at least had no legs. I'm glad I'm not missing half my face like that guy.
I can't believe he was like, take a photo.
Take a photo for my book. Because the mouth was like, it was like, you could see the muscles wanting to work, but they were like severed.
Did anybody actually take a photo?
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I kind of want to see that photo now.
Yeah, it'd be wild, man.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So after that happened, you stepped on the ID. You said the next day somebody also passed away?
Yeah, so I think it was about the next day, Lieutenant Andrew Nuttall, who was the platoon. There was 3 platoons. They each have an officer, and they're all like young guys, like went to Royal Military College, usually like ex-athletes, like really fit guys. But one of the best platoon commanders ever, like a CrossFit guy, salt of the earth. His boys loved him. We weren't there, but we were out on patrol as well, and he stepped on an IED, and he died on scene, like femoral artery, like lost his leg, bled out through the femoral. But his story is like amazing because he was like, his boys were in shock, and he was telling them how to apply first aid, and like the heroism of like, don't worry about me, get up there, get on top of that building, and he knows he's dying, and like that kind of stuff really motivates you. So there's like those 2 days where it's like, yeah, I almost passed away, but this like beautiful man lost his life the next day, and I'm gonna feel lucky and blessed that I'm still with it.
Yeah, if that doesn't motivate you to want to do better and be better, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
I mean, like a second chance at life.
Yeah.
But also, like you said, witnessing this absolute hero.
Yeah.
Still care about others and the mission when actively dying.
Absolutely.
That is powerful stuff, man.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of there's a lot of luck involved. Like we lost 6 guys in that tour. And the team that took over for us, the RCR, Royal Canadian Regiment, they lost in RAO, the 40 guys that took over for us, lost 7 guys in the first week. one of the engineers that had been living with us to end our tour, but take over, because the engineers often come early so they can figure out the AO and like where the bombs are and like the specialties of Afghanistan. And this guy that like we took out on patrol and when my buddy Kevin was killed, and then a week later we're back in Canada and that guy got killed. So like the wildest stuff. And the whole time, I mean, that's why they go after young guys and stuff, because like now I wouldn't be doing that, man. Like the idea of like being out there, like we used to call the guys with kids and stuff, sometimes we call them cowards because like it seemed like they would avoid patrols, and now I get it.
100%.
Right? Like,
dude, I think like yourself, I'm a lover, not a fighter. And I think that, yeah, I don't know if I would ever, because it is a gamble, right? There's, like you said, there's a lot of luck. I don't know if I witnessed something like that I would go back. But maybe like, you know, you go through the training and you work on that mindset that maybe I would try to convince myself that it's not going to be me, or I'm bigger than I think who knows?
yeah.
But me right now, dude, I was at Speeders the other day on the go-kart, so I'm slowing down because I'm like, I could freaking crash here and I could hurt myself. So going out on patrol on one of those,
Well,
I'm like,
you know what's interesting though is like I've gone through a lot of therapy and like I got diagnosed with PTSD in 2011 after coming back from my second tour, and then I was eventually released from the military for it in 2016.
I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. Honestly, like that for me, the combat stuff is one thing, but it took me years to realize what actually affects me most is during the training, we were in a lab accident, a head-on in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. I was sleeping in the back of the tank. We're driving down a gravel road in Wainwright and we hit head-on with another lav. Our driver lost both his legs. The lav was completely crushed in. My buddy's face had to get reconstructive surgery. I was stuck in the back of a rolled over lav for about an hour. Like couldn't breathe, trapped. Like when I say I couldn't move, like it was like, and this was all in between my first and second tour. So by the time I went to that second tour, dude, I was a mess. Like I was not, like, thank God not a lot happened because I wouldn't have been able to hack it, dude. I was like, there was like so much fear. And then come to know like years later after doing all this therapy, what actually affects me the most is that car accident.
it's crazy. You say not a lot happened. You stepped on an IED.
I know.
The next
My buddy
day.
sat on one, dude. He literally sat on one and somebody came by and was like, Kareem, you're on an IED. And he gets up and literally, it was like a cartoon IED. It had an X on the top of it and he sat on it. It's like he was sitting on it for 2 hours, dude.
That is insane.
On Overwatch with his machine gun. And 2 hours later, the sergeant comes to get him. He's like, Kareem, what were you sitting on in the corner of the roof? Because he's just like watching an area.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's an IED.
Oh my God. It just wasn't set up.
Yeah. Think I can take a
Wow.
leak? You
What?
mind? Can we take a
Yeah,
bathroom
let's
break?
take a little pause. All right. So we were just talking about basically how you went on your second tour.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack
Second
there.
tour, and then I came back to 3 months after that. I had a baby. So my son was born in January 2012, and I finished up my second and last tour in November 2011. So I got a girl pregnant after being with her for a month.
Wow.
And we moved in together, and then I went overseas and came
Wow.
back. So I missed like the whole pregnancy part.
Right.
And then I was like, had a baby, and then I was off. I took 8 months parental leave, which was not a smart idea because then I was isolated from the military, and then I transferred to the Navy to get out of combat rotation. I went and we moved to Victoria. Actually, did get an adult charge in between there because I wasn't coping properly when my kid's mother was, or my kid was 4 months old. My ex-wife and I were arguing in the kitchen, and she just kept going at me and saying, like, in my face, saying stuff about my family, and I put my hand up and pushed her away, but it put her on the neck. And of course, we're a young couple, so we got fighting about it. And then the next day, she called the police on me, like, as some retribution. And I still, to this day, have an assault charge on my record from it. But I mean, it's been 13, 14 years. I've proven who I am. It's just one of those things where, like, in a domestic, unfortunately, somebody's got to take it, but I'm in the process of working on a pardon. So, but a lot of that comes down to like not having the coping skills of being back. I went from like being overseas to then having a little baby, the responsibilities of like a relationship where I don't even know the woman.
Dude.
But we went on and moved out to Victoria, had 2 more kids, got married. We're together for 7 or 8 years. For that, I went through like the whole probation part. The military let me stay in. Transferred. I was an electrician in the Navy for 3 or 4 years, but in that phase of my life, I was just absolutely traumatized. I was like fighting on the ship. I almost got released from the military because I punched out my chief in the Navy at a Christmas party.
Seriously?
And 6 or 7 officers because they said something about the infantry. And what do you say? Like some officer said, "Oh, all Patricias are retarded," and I'm like that's why you guys were killed overseas, like just drunken banter.
Jesus
and yeah, I attacked him. I attacked
man.
him, and then my petty officer tried to like stop me, and I punched him out. Went to military jail for like 2 weeks. And this is like I already have 3 kids at this point. And
Bro.
in the court martial, they brought up my lawyer. Unbeknownst to me, brought up, my PTSD diagnosis because by then I could kind of keep it private. And over the course, I accepted it that day, and like my chief wasn't mad at me, and like everybody really rallied around me. They knew my background, and I got released in 2016 based on my PTSD diagnosis and also tinnitus. So I've got constant ringing in the ears. It gets better and better actually the more coping I do. As you see, I also have these nice, beautiful teeth. Because when I got in that lab accident, my jaw broke and got rearranged. So like I was grinding and I just wasn't in a good place. And we moved back here to St. Albert. I started a little business,
Hold on. Hold the fuck on. There's a lot to unpack there, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Jesus. All right. So the girl that you had a kid with was initially she was the one where you got the domestic charge with.
Yeah.
You guys stayed together.
We did.
And had 2 more children.
We did. And got married. Yeah.
And got married. Okay. How does she feel about the fact that you had to deal with all that, adult charge stuff afterwards? Like, was there a lot of...
to be honest with you, without if I don't know if you want to edit this part out, but the reason I did it was she called my mother a whore 7 times. And so and then didn't call the police on me until 3 days later when I was recording her saying something. We were just a young couple fighting, right? And I was being immature, she was being immature, but there's more to it than just that. But the court looked at it like, yo, you choked your wife. No, I didn't. I didn't. And that's always been something embarrassing for me. But the fact that she came to court, wrote a victim impact statement. We were able to move to Victoria. We continued going on. We really did. Outside of that, we eventually got divorced and had a really contentious divorce. We made it through that. I don't think we fought after that for 4 or 5 years. And I really, I grew up single mom, man. And so I was embarrassed at what I did. And in my own head, it's not that I'll never say she had it coming, but she knew how to push me and knew how to get to my buttons, and I broke. But I learned a lot from it, from that moment. And is it embarrassing now when I got to go apply to be I'm the president of St. Albert Slam basketball, 400 kids. I got a record, right? I've worked in all sorts of different environments, secure or not. I have a record, and I've always been honest about it. But yeah, so that happened, and then we stayed together. Thank God we did, because we had 2 more beautiful children who are amazing. But yeah, that was the last time I got charged, and I should have been charged one more time here in Edmonton. I threw a beer bottle at somebody and it broke over their face because he pushed me, and thank God he was a drug dealer and didn't want to do anything with the cops. So it all got let go just at the Grand Villa Casino there. So there was a while where I couldn't go in the Grand Villa Casino. And a lot of this was just not dealing with my stuff after tour, man. Yeah. And I was still in my 20s.
Bro,
right?
just the short amount of time that we've been sitting across from each other and you sharing what you have, it's not a surprise that you have these very large reactions to what may seem as small events.
For sure, dude.
Because look what you went through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and I know you would say this too, it doesn't make it okay, but I think that somebody can totally understand how, untreated not untreated, I don't know if that's the right word, but somebody who has PTSD or somebody who's been through this experience and, hasn't been able to heal from it in a way where these reactions don't come about, I guess.
I think it's your environment too. And in my own words and opinion, I had a spouse at the time who just wasn't okay with that I needed to struggle for a while to get better. So, and that's just maybe based on what she had growing up. It was it's one thing to have mental health disorder. It's one thing to have trauma, but it's another thing to try to heal it and heal it in a nurturing environment. Like that's why people often are able to heal their trauma in like an inpatient facility, because it's all about them and there are no outside distractions. But like for her and for us, like we had, I mean, and I get it, like we had 3 kids to raise. We had a mortgage to pay.
Stress,
when we
man.
moved back here to St. Albert, like, yeah, I mean, on the outside I did well. I owned a business. I had 2 homes, but I was raging PTSD symptoms. And whether I was in a good relationship with a good person or not, I neglected that for a lot of years. And that eventually it was like my own healing journey, honestly, through divorce, like through the failure of a relationship with my kid's mother and everything that I went through after that, which we'll get to another day, because like I was arrested 5 times for domestic stuff that I never did, but just it got really, really crazy. And then there was like, I struggled with that for a while. But ultimately, what really led me into like working with people was in 2021, I went and did the Camino de Santiago in Spain. It's a pilgrimage, like an old Catholic pilgrimage, but it's 750 kilometers of trails. The original route is from France to Santiago de Compostela, which has like this big Catholic church. People come, it's like a Catholic pilgrimage, kind of like walking to Mecca as a Muslim, like that. 350,000 people go every year, but it's more of like a solo journey. So I went for 10 days. I went with just a backpack. I was already now dating my fiance now. And I just went by myself, and I did my walk I did a 220 kilometers in the 7 days. I did the majority of my walk with a Danish ADHD therapist. So like she's going for her master's in ADHD, a German elementary school teacher named Jen, and then psychology graduate who's going to do his master's at Oxford, and he was from South Africa, named Ethan. And I hiked the Camino for the majority of it with these guys. Jesus. And they all said to me at different points in the journey, like I was working as an accountant at the time, and they're like, "You're doing what?" And I'm like, "I'm working as an accountant." They're like, "Man, you're so good with people. You're so easy to talk to. What are you doing?" And I came home 10 days later, quit my job at the accounting firm, went and worked with a buddy so that I could do some transition, a veteran accountant buddy that I know, worked for him. And I applied at Poundmaker's Lodge, and because I really wanted to help people. And I got the job at Poundmakers as a program attendant. And I have a business management accounting degree. So like my business skills are savvy. My leadership skills are pretty savvy. And within 2 months, I was the manager at Poundmakers, managing a staff of 40 people, 100 clients at any time, Indigenous treatment facility. So like I got it was one of the most peaceful places I've ever worked, because as you know, like just Indigenous ceremony is so beautiful and so peaceful. So I got like a university degree in Indigenous ceremony and spirituality, and it ended not so well there, because essentially what I did was I was like in a healing phase of my life. So I wanted to work part-time. I was going to work on my psychology degree. But I very quickly got noticed, like, whoa, this guy's a leader. The manager got fired, so I was running it. And I was in way over my head, bro. And I flunked out of that, obviously, and because I just didn't have the skills to deal with it. Did really well with the clients. Like even now on my Facebook, half of it is Poundmaker clients that like I still follow. And honestly, from my time there, one of my claims to fame is like we had very few people that left, and a lot of them are still sober. Nice. In fact, where I go do my physiotherapy and my mental health every week, there's a girl that works there. She works in the coffee shop down below. She was like fentanyl addict, down and out, no relationship with her kids. You know, a couple years later, the joy I feel when I get to go get my coffee from her every Wednesday. That's awesome. So it really gave me, and it attacked a phase of my life that I struggled with, which was addiction. It helped me to understand the things my dad struggled with way more, because there were so many guys that were like him in there. I'd get to know these people, and then I would always be met with like, "Oh, but man, you're like really bad dad. Like I like you and you're cool, but like you didn't do shit." And then once I got over that, I started to like, I've gotten a couple of people jobs since then. I have referred all the staff from there, like just a great experience. And then from there, I went and worked at Boyle Street and did got the best experience I've ever gotten. I did the interdisciplinary DEN program, which is like a drop-in program, caseload of 7 to 8 people. And while I was there, I had a client that was trying to get his kids back. and I didn't understand. I got frustrated with him. Him and I worked together for honestly 3-4 months, like every day. Really poured my heart and soul into it, and I just didn't understand how this guy could like miss appointments with his kids. And somehow, some way, I got talking with his housing worker, and I learned his story about his own childhood, and read his child services file about all the stuff he dealt with, and then realized the adults are not the problem. This kid possessed every skill in the world to be exactly like I am. We can meet each other on the same intellectual level. He goes just as deep as I do. He just had a really shitty and traumatic childhood. And I was becoming so flustered with the adult world and drug addiction and like clients dying once a week. And I was like, I got to go work with the kids. And I've never really looked back. And I think it's like partly my way of helping, where I can be an expert and like, I feel like I was a struggling teenager, maybe not in the same way. Maybe it wasn't all to drugs, but I definitely was a confused teenager that had more to give and not an outlet to give it. And in that process, I've like found that my best gift has been my lived experience. And in that meeting like peer-to-peer stuff, like meeting other people in the industry with lived experience that were like not the greatest. Like most social work students in our field, like just kind of grew up and they went to college and like they're good people. They do great work, but I don't have anything in common with them outside of the work we do now. And yeah, I working at Pow Makers, like a lot of the people that work there were ex-addicts, and stories of recovery are so beautiful. And I love a good story where somebody turns their life around and does good because it's what I want to do. And yeah, now I'm like dedicating the rest of my life to working with youth. My main goal is to figure out the big problems with the transition from youth being in jail to youth leaving jail. The only reason why I did fine was because I always had somewhere to go. But now working in this field, I'm like, most of these kids are just getting out. Like they get out on a Friday. Number one, like that, like what does that say to you? So I think now I'm in a phase where I've realized that I have a lot to give. Being a worker is great. I love it, but like I want to change policy. So I've gone back to school to get my criminal justice major and a minor in psychology so that I can keep working with kids, but change policy. I realize that like my voice is one that people generally listen to. I've got the right passion to do it and the right lived experience. So as hard as it is, I'm going to take a little bit of time off the streets and go figure out the policy and how to change that and then jump right back in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, my experience with you, man, has been always positive, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying or a lot of what people have said to you on this pilgrimage. Like, if I had to meet you and you weren't already in this field, I'd be like, dude, you're doing society a disservice because we need people like yourself who are real, genuine, who are rough around the edges, but have good intentions and have the passion and actually care. I think one thing that really pissed me off when I was in college, the second time, like yourself, I had to do a lot of figuring shit out to get myself into a college seat. Yeah. Right? My life was so unstable that even getting there for the second time, I did a trade first. Didn't work out, obviously. Same like you. I'm like, what am I doing here? This is not where I belong. No. So the second time I'm in college, I'm surrounded by all these other people who I did a child and youth care course with addiction support because like yourself, I wanted to help, but I wanted like the educate. I needed some legitimacy behind me. I'm around people who like just got out of high school, don't know, they heard about maybe you could work with youth here, people cheating on exams, and I'm around these people and I'm dead serious because I've been through the child welfare system. I've experienced 100%. Hardship. I've seen it, man. This is something I really want to do, and I really want to give back and do it the right way, that it would just really piss me off being around these people. And then, but you always find like that one guy. I actually gravitated this one guy, Ed. Shout out to Ed. He was in his 40s. He's a manager at like some sort of retail store. But what he really liked was giving people a shot. He'd have somebody off the street. He'd give you a job, man. And then he'd coach you through that. And he's like, dude, this is what I'm meant to be doing. I'm meant to be helping people, getting them where they need to be. And he was in his 40s. He picked me up every day. Me and him just go to college together. I actually took it serious. And now he's fucking thriving, man. I'm out here doing my thing. And, you know, some people aren't, you know, where they're not meant to be, though, at the same time, right?
I'm a big believer in that, man. It's like I'm not a religious guy. I'm definitely, I know there's something. Because like
Sure.
there's just too many. Like even walking here today, like I haven't been downtown in quite a while, and like I saw 3 people I know. Like that doesn't just happen,
Yeah.
right? And like, but I think the biggest thing in like this community that we're a part of, whether it's like recovery or just like that supporter role, the big thing that I've learned to like help me keep going is other people's stories of not success but like progress.
That's why I do what I'm doing right now. This is
Exactly.
why I want to sit down across from people, because everybody's got a story, man.
100%.
And I feel like in sharing that story, it'll help build compassion for other people that you meet that you might not know. Like you said, you meet someone on the street, you're seeing them for face value, but you didn't read what happened to them before that, what got them there. They were a kid at one point.
Well,
they were a baby.
I used to judge addicts, man. And like when I was a
100%.
teenager, I judged, like even maybe when I was a military guy, I judged addicts. But it was like, am I judging addicts, or am I running from something that I need to face? Because what I actually find is like I get along with addicts because I'm an addict myself, right? And like maybe not to those levels, but I also think the big difference is they didn't have people to like grab them. I did. And that's outside of that. Like holistically, we're the same, man.
Yeah, man.
The only thing that's different is our experience, right? And our cards we got dealt. Like you know, like some of the beautiful moments, the depths you go with people on the streets when they have nothing but what they're willing to give you out of your heart, or like when somebody's struggling. Like working in addictions, even though like it had a really bad ending over there, and like it just, but work, right? But like the actual beauty of it all, and like when it all comes together, man, like I've done a lot of cool things, like even compared to the military. To me, like the story of recovery, seeing somebody share about their recovery for the first time is like, I love hearing people tell their story. That's why like all those conferences we do, and like when you shared yours, like and it was just, it's so empowering for me. And I think it's like something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right. This is one of my first experiences really sharing my story in like a public
And this is
setting.
like the tip of the iceberg, man.
And I already feel empowered. So like now it's just,
Yeah.
I'm going to even more preach to people that like,
Good,
hey,
you
like I
should.
coach a lot of sports teams, and what I'm really coaching the kids on is not the sport, man. I'm teaching them how to be open.
Yeah.
Like you think people would be more open with the internet and stuff, but they're not. Like people are more and more closed off. And like for guys like you and I that are open, like I easily give people my heart and soul.
Yeah, man. It's a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways, man.
Yeah, I've been
'Cause
burnt a lot.
vulnerability, I mean, it means uncertainty. It means risk. It means emotional exposure. But it also means love, connection, belonging, purpose. And you can't have one without the other.
No.
You can't shield yourself from all the risk and all the hurt and all the pain while also experiencing all that other stuff on the other side of it. I've come to learn that. And that's why I always preach to youth, like, try again. You know, if I could tell you anything, is try again. Yeah, you might have been hurt. You might have been burned. Trust again.
Yeah.
You know, open your heart again, man, because that's just sort of, that's the risk you take when you open yourself up. But there could be so much on that other side, man. And, yeah, I think that you should continue to tell your story, man. And I should have you back on another time, because I know for a fact that once I leave here, I'm going to be like,
Oh yeah.
man, because there's so much going on there. And, yeah, you are such a personable guy, dude. Like, and we need more people like yourself. I remember in Ottawa, there was this guy, Ahmed, and we worked at an addiction treatment center again. Again, I loved working there, dude. It was probably one of the best jobs I've had, because it was like a 3-month live-in program for youth, and you got to see them transform, man.
So beautiful.
And I had youth write me letters saying how I, like, you know, was transformational in their recovery journey. And I did nothing but show up and listen and, you know, maybe give them a little bit of advice here and there. But, like, just being present and being someone to hang out with and not judge them, that was, like, sometimes enough for some people to turn it around.
That's it,
But
man.
this guy,
Non-judgmental.
Ahmed, exactly. This guy, Ahmed, he's worked here for a long time. It's no secret that a lot of time in this field, you're not getting paid a lot of money, man, and you cannot ignore the financial responsibilities that you have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to live these days, and working at a nonprofit, man, you're not really getting ahead. So he was, like, talking about working for the city and becoming a bus driver, and I was like, dude, no. Like, you cannot. Like, you are so good. These youth look up to you. You are, like, a leader, man, and, like, I look up to you, man. Like, you are somebody who, like, needs to be here, but is being pushed out because of all these other demands that we're having, I was like, if I ever see you on a bus, man, I'm getting on a bus and hauling your ass off of it, dude. Like, I don't know what's going on now because I don't live in Ottawa. We lost touch, but like people like yourself, I feel the same way, man. Like, I've been fortunate that since I've been here in Edmonton, that I was part of a team of people that go against the grain of like a typical youth worker type person, and I've been part of this group of individuals' lived experience, and that's being celebrated because I worked a lot of places where they tell me not to talk about that stuff. Don't talk about what you went through because you don't want to mess somebody else up, or maybe you might not be healed. And I understand that and I respect that. But I also sat across from a lot of people where I could make that connection, and that connection could be such a turning point for them because oftentimes you feel like you're alone going through all this. How powerful is it to know that you're not, and to know that somebody else has been through or felt something similar, but look at them now, they've overcome it, and then that's possible for you too. Yeah. But sharing, opening up, man, that stuff relieves you of pain, and it builds you with confidence, and it really steers your boat in the right direction. So to be part of this group now of individuals who, like, I got hired not because of my college diploma. They didn't ask me for any of that shit. I got hired because I've been through something, I understand, and now I'm in a situation. I have a track record of like success. It wasn't just yesterday this happened and today I'm ready for a change. It's like I've been changing. I've been kind of making progress, like you've talked about. So yeah, like yourself, man, like keep with that vision that you have. And if I could ever be a part of it in any meaningful way, man, I would love to. And yeah. I don't know, man. I really appreciate you coming on and like telling your story, and thank you for your service. Like seriously, like I knew you were in the military, but I didn't know what you were doing. Like we've never talked about it, and like that's insane. Like that's so insane. So I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing your story, because that's what this is all about, and we should definitely do it again. Heck yeah. And I look forward for everything, Tanner. Just know that.
Thanks, buddy.
Cool, man.
Appreciate you.
No sweat.
That was cool, man.